Welcome, weary wanderer, to the strange and wonderful world of Elmore, a place where logic bends like rubber and mysteries lurk in every corner of suburban normalcy. Tonight, we'll explore the deepest enigmas of the amazing world of Gumball, those questions that have puzzled fans and left even the show's creators scratching their heads. From the true nature of reality itself to the secrets hidden within ordinary families, we'll drift through unexplained phenomena and unanswered riddles. So settle in, get comfortable, and let your mind wander through these delightful mysteries. There's no need to solve everything, just let the wonder wash over you like a gentle tide. In the quiet suburbs of Elmore lies perhaps the greatest mystery of all, the very nature of reality itself, where the impossible becomes mundane and the extraordinary masquerades as everyday life. Here, in this peculiar corner of existence, the fundamental laws that govern our understanding of the world seem to have been written by a child with crayons, revised by a teenager with attitude, and edited by an adult who has learned that consistency is overrated when magic is readily available. The first thing any visitor to Elmore notices, though they might not immediately understand its profound implications, is the remarkable diversity of its inhabitants. This is not merely the pleasant multiculturalism of a thriving community, but something far more mysterious and wonderful, a place where beings of entirely different dimensional origins, artistic styles, and physical laws coexist with such seamless harmony that their interactions seem perfectly natural despite defying every principle of physics, biology, and common sense. Consider, if you will, the simple act of a conversation between Gumball Watterson and his friend Alan. Here, we have a blue cat rendered in traditional two-dimensional animation, with bold outlines and vibrant colors speaking face-to-face with a balloon whose existence is defined by the peculiar physics of inflated rubber and helium. Yet when Gumball places his cartoon paw upon Alan's balloon surface, there is genuine physical contact, real emotional connection, and authentic friendship that transcends the boundaries of their radically different forms of existence. The mystery deepens when we observe how these interactions function on a practical level. How does a character drawn in classic cartoon style cast a shadow that falls upon a photorealistic background? How does Darwin, rendered in simple two-dimensional animation, create ripples in computer-generated water that responds to his presence with all the complexity of advanced fluid dynamics simulation? The answer, it seems, lies not in the realm of science, but in something far more profound and beautiful, a reality where intention and emotion carry more weight than physics and logic. This malleable nature of Elmore's reality becomes even more apparent when we witness moments of fourth wall breaking, those instances where characters acknowledge the artificial nature of their existence or directly address an unseen audience. Yet even this awareness seems inconsistent, as if the ability to perceive the true nature of their reality comes and goes like a radio signal drifting in and out of range. Some characters, like Sarah G. Lato, demonstrate an almost painful awareness of their fictional nature, while others, like Richard, seem blissfully unaware that they exist within any kind of constructed narrative at all. The question of what determines this varying level of awareness haunts the deeper mysteries of Elmore like a gentle melody that plays just at the edge of hearing. Is it intelligence that grants the ability to see beyond the veil? Is it emotional sensitivity? Or perhaps it is simply another one of those beautiful inconsistencies that make Elmore such a fascinating place to contemplate, where the rules change based on what will create the most interesting or meaningful story at any given moment. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Elmore's reality is its relationship with what we might call the outside world, that realm of existence that seems to function according to more traditional rules of physics and logic. There are hints throughout the show's mythology that Elmore exists as something of a pocket dimension, a place where the normal rules have been suspended in favor of something more flexible and forgiving. References to the real world appear occasionally, usually in contexts that suggest Elmore is somehow separate from or parallel to ordinary reality. This separation is most dramatically illustrated in episodes that deal with the void, that mysterious realm where forgotten or discarded elements of Elmore's reality go to exist in limbo. The void represents perhaps the most profound mystery in all of Gumball lore, a place where the detritus of inconsistent storytelling takes on a life of its own, where abandoned plotlines and forgotten characters drift in a landscape that seems to exist outside of time and narrative structure entirely. The existence of the void raises questions that spiral into increasingly complex philosophical territory. If Elmore is a reality where stories have physical weight and narrative consistency affects the stability of existence itself, then what does it mean for elements of that reality to be forgotten or discarded? Does this suggest that Elmore's reality is consciously constructed by some unseen creative force, constantly revised and edited like a living document? Or is it perhaps evidence that reality itself, even in our own world, is far more malleable and subjective than we typically imagine? The inhabitants of the void, those characters and concepts that have been written out of Elmore's active reality, seem to possess a unique perspective on the nature of existence that transcends the experience of those still living within the main narrative. They understand themselves to be creations, constructs given form by imagination and intention. Yet they continue to exist even when that intention has moved on to other concerns. This suggests a kind of consciousness that persists beyond its original purpose, a depth of being that cannot be simply erased by editorial decision or narrative convenience. When characters from Elmore proper encounter the void, the experience seems to be simultaneously traumatic and enlightening. They come face to face with the fundamental uncertainty of their own existence, while also discovering reserves of strength and determination they never knew they possessed. The journey into and out of the void becomes a metaphor for the process of self-discovery that every conscious being must undertake, the gradual realization that existence is both more fragile and more resilient than we initially understand. The technology within Elmore presents its own fascinating set of mysteries related to the nature of reality. Electronic devices function according to rules that seem to shift based on narrative necessity rather than consistent programming. Computers demonstrate artificial intelligence that ranges from helpful to malevolent, often within the same episode. Video games become portals to alternate realities. Smartphones display information that seems to come from sources beyond conventional networks. Television broadcasts show programs that reflect the inner lives of their viewers with unsettling accuracy. This fluidity of technological functions suggests that in Elmore, the distinction between the digital and the physical, between the programmed and the organic, is just another boundary that exists more as a suggestion than a firm rule. The implications are both comforting and mysterious. If technology responds to emotional need rather than just logical programming, then perhaps the universe itself is more responsive to consciousness and intention than we typically assume. The temporal aspects of Elmore's reality present equally fascinating puzzles. Time seems to flow differently for different characters, with some aging at normal rates while others remain constant across what appears to be years of adventures. Holidays and seasons cycle through with dreamlike irregularity, appearing when emotionally appropriate rather than following any consistent calendar. Historical events are referenced with charming inconsistency, as if the past itself is subject to revision based on present needs. This flexible relationship with time creates a reality where the important moments can stretch to accommodate their emotional significance, while mundane periods compress into insignificance. It's a vision of existence where time serves story and character development rather than the other way around, where the universe itself conspires to ensure that every experience receives exactly the duration it deserves. The artistic styles that coexist within Elmore serve as visual metaphors for different ways of experiencing and interpreting reality. The bold, simplified forms of traditional animation suggest a way of seeing that emphasizes emotion and action over detailed analysis. The photorealistic elements ground certain experiences in familiar physical laws. The computer-generated characters and environments introduce possibilities that exist at the intersection of imagination and technology. Each style represents a different lens through which consciousness can perceive and interact with existence. When these different artistic realities interact, something magical happens. A synthesis that is greater than the sum of its parts. A harmony that suggests that diversity of perspective enriches rather than complicates the experience of being. The visual metaphor becomes a philosophical principle. Reality is most complete when it embraces multiple ways of seeing and being, when it allows for contradictions and inconsistencies to coexist in productive tension. The mystery of how these different realities maintain coherence while preserving their distinctiveness points toward a fundamental principle of Elmore's existence: that unity does not require uniformity, that harmony can emerge from the most unlikely combinations of elements. This principle extends beyond the visual into every aspect of life in Elmore, from the way different species interact to the way impossible events are accepted as part of daily experience. As we drift deeper into contemplation of these mysteries, we begin to understand that Elmore's reality functions as a kind of gentle teaching about the nature of existence itself. In a world where anything is possible, but everything has consequences, where logic is optional, but love is essential, where consistency is less important than authenticity, we find reflections of truths that apply far beyond the boundaries of any animated series. The deepest mystery of all may be why this particular combination of impossibilities feels so natural, so right, so perfectly suited to exploring the complexities of consciousness, relationship, and meaning. Perhaps it is because Elmore represents reality as it might be, if it were consciously designed to support growth, learning, and connection, rather than simply following blind physical laws. It is a universe where the needs of developing consciousness take precedence over the demands of logical consistency, where story and character development are recognized as fundamental forces, as powerful as gravity or electromagnetism. In this gentle contemplation of impossible realities and beautiful inconsistencies, we find not answers, but something far more valuable: permission to embrace the mysteries in our own existence, to find wonder in contradiction, and to trust that meaning can emerge from the most unlikely combinations of elements. The nature of Elmore's reality teaches us that the most profound truths are often found not in explanation but in acceptance, not in solving mysteries but in learning to dance with them, allowing their presence to enrich our experience rather than demanding their surrender to our understanding. In the heart of Elmore stands a house that appears perfectly ordinary. From the outside, a modest suburban dwelling with faded paint and a lawn that perpetually teeters between neglect and wild abundance. Yet within these unassuming walls lives perhaps the most mysterious family in all of animation, a collection of individuals whose secrets run deeper than the deepest ocean, and whose bonds transcend every conventional understanding of what makes a family truly function. The Watterson family presents us with our first great puzzle simply by existing as they do, a unit so improbably assembled and yet so perfectly synchronized that they seem to have been designed by someone who understood the deepest principles of love and chaos in equal measure. Each member brings their own enigmas to the collective mystery. their own unanswered questions that interweave with the others to create a tapestry of wonderful uncertainty that becomes more beautiful the longer we contemplate its intricate patterns. At the center of this whirlwind of domestic mystery stands Nicole Watterson, a blue cat whose very existence challenges our understanding of what it means to be both ordinary and extraordinary simultaneously. On the surface, she appears to be a typical suburban mother concerned with bills and groceries, frustrated by her family's chaos, devoted to maintaining some semblance of order in a household that seems actively allergic to conventional structure. Yet beneath this familiar exterior lies a being whose capabilities border on the supernatural, whose past remains shrouded in hints and implications, and whose true nature may be far more complex than even she herself fully understands. The mystery of Nicole's superhuman abilities manifests in moments of crisis when her maternal instincts override whatever internal limiters typically keep her power in check. We have witnessed her move with speed that defies physics, demonstrate strength that could reshape landscapes, and display combat skills that suggest training far beyond anything a suburban upbringing might provide. When her family is threatened, Nicole transforms from loving mother into something approaching a force of nature, her fury so concentrated and purposeful that it bends reality around her will. Yet perhaps even more mysterious than the extent of her abilities is the question of their origin. How does a cat who works at a rainbow factory and worries about mortgage payments possess the skills of a master martial artist? What experiences shaped her into someone capable of facing down threats that would terrify seasoned warriors? The glimpses we receive of her past suggest a youth far removed from domestic tranquility, hints of adventures and challenges that forged her into someone capable of protecting what she loves with the intensity of a guardian angel and the effectiveness of a supernatural warrior. The enigma deepens when we consider how seamlessly Nicole has integrated these extraordinary capabilities into an ostensibly ordinary life. She uses her superhuman speed to complete household chores with impossible efficiency, channels her tactical brilliance into managing family schedules and budgets, and transforms her fierce protective instincts into the kind of nurturing care that makes her children feel safe enough to attempt their wildest adventures. It is as if she has consciously chosen to use world-shaping power in service of the smallest, most intimate victories, a perfectly prepared dinner, a crisis averted, a moment of peace in the midst of chaos. This conscious diminishment of her own potential in favor of family happiness suggests depths of character that most beings never have the opportunity to explore. Nicole represents the mystery of choosing love over power, of finding fulfillment in service to others rather than in the exercise of extraordinary abilities for their own sake. Her superhuman strength becomes most beautiful not when she uses it to defeat enemies, but when she employs it to give the perfect hug, to catch a falling child, to hold together a family that might otherwise fly apart under the centrifugal force of its own exuberance. The questions surrounding Nicole's relationship with her own family add additional layers to her mystery. Why is she estranged from her parents? What happened in her youth that created such distance between her and those who raised her? The few references to her extended family suggest relationships fractured by misunderstanding and complicated by expectations that were never fulfilled. Perhaps her extraordinary abilities created a gulf between her and those who could not understand the weight of such power, or perhaps her choices to embrace domesticity over adventure, love over achievement, disappointed those who had envisioned a different destiny for someone so gifted. Yet, in choosing Richard as her partner, in building a life centered around the daily miracles of family love, rather than the grand gestures of heroic adventure, Nicole demonstrates a wisdom that transcends conventional notions of success or fulfillment. She has found something more valuable than acclaim or recognition, the deep satisfaction that comes from being exactly who someone else needs you to be, from using your greatest gifts in service of the people who matter most to you. Richard Watterson presents an entirely different but equally fascinating set of mysteries. A character whose apparent simplicity masks depths that may be far greater than anyone, including himself, fully realizes. On the surface, he embodies the archetype of the lovably incompetent father, unemployed, easily distracted, prone to decisions that create more problems than they solve. Yet beneath this familiar exterior lies a being whose relationship with intelligence, wisdom, and reality itself operates according to principles that defy easy categorization. The central mystery of Richard's character lies in the question of whether his apparent simplicity represents genuine limitation or a different kind of intelligence altogether, one that operates outside conventional frameworks of logic and analysis. There are moments when his seemingly random observations prove to be profoundly insightful, when his childlike approach to problems yields solutions that more sophisticated minds could never reach, when his emotional intuition guides the family through crises that might have destroyed a household governed by purely rational principles. Consider the paradox of Richard's unemployment and the family's mysteriously stable financial situation. By all conventional measures, a family of 5 with only one working parent should struggle with basic expenses. Yet the Wattersons seem to muddle through economic crises with the kind of resilience that suggests either hidden resources or a relationship with money that transcends normal economic principles. Perhaps Richard's true contribution to the family lies not in traditional employment, but in his ability to navigate the impossible with such optimism and creativity that reality itself conspires to support his endeavors. The mystery deepens when we examine Richard's occasional displays of unexpected competence or knowledge. These moments arrive without warning and disappear just as quickly, as if some deeper aspect of his consciousness occasionally surfaces before submerging again beneath the familiar patterns of childlike wonder and benign chaos. Is this evidence of dormant intelligence waiting to be awakened, or perhaps proof that wisdom comes in forms that our conventional educational systems are not designed to recognize or cultivate? Richard's relationship with his family reveals additional enigmas that speak to the complexity hidden beneath his simple exterior. His marriage to Nicole, a union between someone of extraordinary capability and someone of apparent ordinariness, suggests either that opposites truly do attract in ways that transcend rational compatibility, or that Richard possesses qualities that are not immediately visible, but are deeply valued by someone with the wisdom to recognize true worth when she encounters it. The children's responses to their father provide further clues to his hidden nature. While they often express frustration with his impractical approach to life, they also turn to him for comfort, guidance, and the kind of unconditional love that can only be provided by someone whose heart is genuinely open and generous. Richard may not be able to help with homework or provide conventional life advice, but he offers something equally valuable: the assurance that they are loved exactly as they are, without conditions or expectations for improvement. Perhaps most mysteriously, Richard seems to possess an intuitive understanding of what his family needs from him in any given moment. When Nicole is overwhelmed by the weight of her responsibilities, he provides distraction and levity. When the children are struggling with problems that require emotional rather than analytical solutions, he offers the kind of presence that can only be given by someone who has never learned to hide his authentic self behind masks of sophistication or social appropriateness. The Watterson family legacy itself presents intriguing questions about the nature of inheritance and the ways that traits pass between generations. Richard's own family history remains largely unexplored, but the glimpses we receive suggest patterns of eccentricity and unconventional wisdom that may run deeper than surface appearances indicate. Is Richard's approach to life the result of genetic predisposition, learned behavior, or conscious choice to embrace a different way of being in the world? The mystery of how Gumball and Darwin became brothers transcends the simple narrative of pet adoption and enters territory that speaks to fundamental questions about the nature of family, love, and identity. Their relationship demonstrates that the bonds between siblings have less to do with shared genetics and more to do with shared experiences, mutual support, and the kind of loyalty that emerges when two beings choose to face the world together, regardless of their different origins or natures. Gumball's role as older brother to Darwin reveals aspects of his character that might otherwise remain hidden beneath his tendency towards self-centered schemes and dramatic overreactions. In his relationship with Darwin, we see Gumball's capacity for genuine care, his protective instincts, and his ability to put someone else's needs ahead of his own desires. The mystery lies not in how a cat and a fish became brothers, but in how their brotherhood brings out the best qualities in both of them. Darwin's perspective on family provides equally fascinating insights into the transformative power of love and acceptance. His evolution from pet to family member represents more than physical transformation. It speaks to the profound changes that occur when a being is truly seen and valued for who they are rather than what they are. Darwin's gratitude for his inclusion in the family never seems to fade, yet it has transformed from the desperate appreciation of the outsider into the quiet confidence of someone who knows they belong. The different personalities and approaches to life displayed by Gumball and Darwin, despite their shared upbringing, raise intriguing questions about the nature of identity formation. Gumball tends toward impulsiveness and grand gestures, while Darwin favors thoughtfulness and gentle guidance. These differences suggest that family influence shapes character in complex ways, allowing individual natures to flourish rather than demanding conformity to a single model of behavior. Anais Watterson presents perhaps the most enigmatic mystery of all the family members, a being whose intellectual capabilities seem to exceed not only those of her immediate family, but possibly those of every other character in Elmore. Her genius-level intelligence raises profound questions about genetic inheritance, environmental influence, and the responsibilities that come with exceptional abilities. The mystery begins with the simple question of how two parents who display conventional or even below-average intellectual capabilities could produce a child whose analytical abilities border on the supernatural. Anais demonstrates understanding of complex scientific principles, philosophical concepts, and social dynamics that should be far beyond her chronological age. This suggests either that intelligence is far more mysterious in its origins than we typically assume, or that Anais represents some kind of evolutionary leap forward in the development of consciousness itself. Yet perhaps even more mysterious than the extent of Anais's intelligence is her decision to use it primarily in service of her family's happiness, rather than for personal advancement or recognition. She could easily outshine her parents and siblings, could pursue achievements that would bring her fame and admiration, yet she chooses instead to apply her formidable abilities to the humble work of keeping her family safe, happy, and functional. This choice reveals a wisdom that transcends mere intellectual capability. The understanding that true intelligence lies not in what you can accomplish for yourself, but in how you can use your gifts to enrich the lives of those you love. Anais's genius becomes most beautiful not when she solves complex equations or demonstrates superior knowledge, but when she uses her insights to help Gumball avoid the consequences of his impulsiveness, or when she finds ways to support her parents through the challenges of maintaining their unconventional household. The family's financial situation presents its own set of delightful mysteries that speak to the elastic nature of Elmore's reality and the power of love to overcome practical obstacles. By any conventional analysis, the Wattersons should struggle with basic expenses, one working parent, multiple children, a mortgage, and Richard's tendency toward purchases that prioritize immediate gratification over long-term financial planning. Yet somehow they manage to maintain their lifestyle with the kind of resilience that suggests either hidden resources or a universe that conspires to support families who truly love each other. Perhaps the answer lies not in conventional economics, but in the mysterious ways that generosity and optimism can create their own forms of abundance. The Wattersons may not have much money, but they possess something far more valuable: the ability to find joy in simple pleasures, to support each other through difficult times, and to face uncertainty with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you are not facing it alone. The mystery of Nicole's estrangement from her extended family hints at deeper stories that remain largely untold, relationships that were fractured by misunderstandings or damaged by expectations that could never be fulfilled. Her isolation from her family of origin makes her chosen family even more precious, suggesting that the bonds we create through love and commitment may be stronger than those we inherit through genetics and circumstance. This theme of chosen family versus inherited obligation runs through all the Watterson relationships, creating a household where every member has actively decided to remain connected despite the challenges that such a decision entails. They stay together not because they have to, but because they want to, because they have discovered something in each other that makes the difficulties of daily life worthwhile. The seasonal and holiday celebrations in the Watterson household reveal additional aspects of their mysterious functionality as a family unit. Despite their individual quirks and the chaos that inevitably erupts from their interactions, they somehow manage to create meaningful traditions, to mark important occasions, and to give each other the gift of belonging to something larger than their individual selves. These celebrations often go wrong in spectacular ways, yet the failures somehow transform into successes through the family's ability to find humor in disaster and meaning in chaos. Their holidays may not resemble the perfect gatherings depicted in magazines or movies, but they possess something equally valuable: the authentic warmth that comes from people who have learned to love each other, not despite their flaws, but because of the unique beauty that emerges when those flaws combine in unexpected, harmonious. As we contemplate the layered mysteries of the Watterson family, we begin to understand that their greatest secret may be the simplest and most profound truth of all: that love, when it is genuine and unconditional, has the power to transform the most unlikely collection of individuals into something greater than the sum of their parts. Their household functions not because they have solved all their problems or overcome all their limitations, but because they have created a space where each member can be authentically themselves while still contributing to the welfare of the whole. In their daily negotiations between chaos and order, between individual desires and family responsibilities, between practical necessities and impossible dreams, the Wattersons demonstrate that the most beautiful mysteries are often hiding in plain sight, disguised as ordinary family life, but revealing themselves to anyone patient enough to look beneath the surface and wise enough to recognize magic when it appears wearing the comfortable clothes of everyday love. In the deepest waters of Elmore's mysteries lies perhaps the most profound transformation ever witnessed in the realm of animated existence: the remarkable journey of Darwin Watterson, from simple goldfish to beloved family member, a metamorphosis that challenges our understanding of consciousness, identity, and the very nature of what it means to belong. His story unfolds like a gentle meditation on the power of love to transcend the boundaries that biology and physics would seem to impose upon the possible. The scientific impossibility of Darwin's transformation serves as our entry point into contemplating mysteries that extend far beyond the realm of conventional zoology or evolutionary biology. Here we encounter a being who has somehow bridged the gap between two entirely different forms of existence, retaining elements of his aquatic origins while developing capabilities that allow him to function as a terrestrial family member. The very existence of such a transformation suggests that in Elmore, the laws that govern biological development are subject to forces more powerful than genetics or environmental pressure, forces that originate in the realm of emotional necessity and conscious choice. Darwin's physical form presents a fascinating study in contradictions that somehow resolve into perfect harmony. He has developed legs and lungs that allow him to walk on land and breathe air, yet his basic anatomy remains unmistakably piscine. His orange coloration, his large eyes, his fundamental body structure, all speak to his origins as a creature of the water, while his newfound abilities demonstrate adaptation so complete that he rarely seems to notice the miraculous nature of his own existence. This seamless integration of aquatic and terrestrial characteristics raises profound questions about the nature of physical transformation and the relationship between consciousness and biology. Did Darwin's body change because his mind needed it to change in order to pursue the relationships that had become precious to him? Or did his consciousness expand to fill the possibilities that his transformed physiology made available? The answer may lie in recognizing that such questions represent false dichotomies that in Darwin's case, as in many of the most beautiful mysteries, mind and body, intention and capability, desire and reality evolved together in a dance of mutual becoming. The retention of his fish-like qualities serves as a constant reminder of Darwin's unique perspective on existence. His relationship with water remains special and mysterious, suggesting that transformation, no matter how complete, never entirely erases the imprint of our origins. When Darwin enters water, he displays a grace and comfort that speaks to genetic memories older than his conscious identity. Yet this connection to his aquatic past enriches rather than conflicts with his terrestrial present, creating a character whose dual nature allows him access to experiences that neither fully fish nor fully land-dwelling creatures could achieve. This duality manifests in countless subtle ways throughout Darwin's daily life. His movements sometimes carry the flowing quality of underwater locomotion, even when he walks on dry land. His emotional expressions often include the wide-eyed wonder that we associate with creatures encountering the world through senses designed for a very different environment. His problem-solving approaches frequently demonstrate the kind of lateral thinking that might develop in a being whose fundamental experience of physics, the buoyancy and three-dimensional movement possibilities of aquatic life differs radically from that of his terrestrial family members. The psychological aspects of Darwin's transformation present even deeper mysteries than the physical ones. The development of human-like consciousness in a being who began life as a pet goldfish challenges our assumptions about the nature of self-awareness, personality, formation, and emotional development. How does a creature whose original existence was presumably governed by simple biological imperatives, finding food, avoiding predators, responding to basic environmental stimuli, develop the complex emotional landscape that allows Darwin to experience friendship, loyalty, moral reasoning, and the sophisticated forms of love that bind families together? The answer may lie in recognizing that consciousness itself is far more mysterious and miraculous than we typically acknowledge. Perhaps the capacity for self-awareness, empathy, and complex emotional response exists as a potential in all living beings, waiting for the right conditions to manifest and flourish. In Darwin's case, those conditions were provided by the Watterson family's complete acceptance of him as a member of their household, their recognition of his worth, and their investment in his well-being. The transformative power of being truly seen and valued cannot be underestimated in considering Darwin's evolution. When a being is treated as if they possess consciousness, personality, and the capacity for growth, those qualities have room to develop in ways that might otherwise remain dormant. The Watterson family's decision to relate to Darwin as a family member rather than a pet may have created the psychological space necessary for his remarkable development. This suggests that consciousness and identity are not fixed properties, but dynamic processes that respond to the social and emotional environments in which they develop. Darwin's transformation becomes a meditation on the power of love and acceptance to call forth potentials that might otherwise never manifest, to create realities that transcend what seemed possible based on initial conditions alone. The speed of Darwin's adaptation to family life raises additional questions about the nature of learning and emotional development. He seems to have acquired not just the physical capabilities necessary for terrestrial life, but also the social skills, emotional intelligence, and cultural understanding that allow him to function as a contributing member of the household. This rapid acquisition of complex capabilities suggests either that the process of transformation included access to knowledge and abilities that transcended normal learning patterns, or that Darwin possesses a form of intelligence that allows him to absorb and integrate new information at rates that exceed conventional educational models. Perhaps most remarkably, Darwin's transformation included the development of moral reasoning and ethical sensibilities that often surpassed those of his family members. His consistent kindness, his tendency to encourage peaceful resolution of conflicts, his genuine concern for the well-being of others, these qualities suggest that his evolution encompassed not just physical and intellectual development, but also spiritual and moral growth of the highest order. This moral dimension of Darwin's character raises fascinating questions about the relationship between innocence and wisdom. Having begun life as a creature, presumably innocent of moral complexity, Darwin seems to have developed ethical intuitions that combine the purity of genuine innocence with the practical wisdom necessary for navigating complex social relationships. He has somehow managed to retain the goodness that comes from never having been corrupted by selfishness or cruelty, while developing the sophistication necessary to help others work through their own moral challenges. Darwin's role within the family dynamic demonstrates the unique contributions that can emerge from his particular combination of perspectives and capabilities. His aquatic origins may have given him a different relationship with the flow of time and the rhythm of natural cycles, allowing him to bring a sense of patience and acceptance to family situations that might otherwise escalate into chaos. His experience of transformation may have taught him that change, even dramatic change, is possible, and that apparent limitations need not define future possibilities. As the family member who has most completely embraced the process of becoming something different from what he originally was, Darwin often serves as a guide and counselor for others facing their own challenges with identity and change. His successful navigation of the journey from one form of existence to another gives him unique credibility when offering support to family members struggling with questions of who they are and who they might become. The implications of Darwin's existence extend far beyond the boundaries of the Watterson household, raising questions about the potential for transformation that might exist in other pets, other relationships, and other forms of connection that we typically underestimate. If love and acceptance can facilitate such dramatic development in one case, what other potentials might be waiting for the right conditions to manifest? Darwin's story becomes a meditation on the hidden possibilities that surround us, the miraculous transformations that might be available if we learn to see and treat other beings with the kind of recognition and respect that the Wattersons showed to their pet goldfish. The mystery of how Darwin developed his particular personality traits, his optimism, his loyalty, his gentle wisdom points toward questions about the sources of character and the factors that influence moral development. Did these qualities emerge from his fish nature, representing perhaps the peaceful acceptance that comes from life in a simpler, more flowing environment? Or did they develop as responses to the love and security he found in his new family? Expressions of gratitude and commitment that took root in the fertile soil of unconditional acceptance. The answer may be that both influences contributed to creating the unique being that Darwin has become, that his transformation represents a beautiful synthesis of his original nature with the possibilities opened up by his new circumstances. His fish origins may have provided a foundation of innocence and adaptability, while his family relationships supplied the motivation and context for developing more complex forms of consciousness and emotional expression. Darwin's continued connection to water serves as a beautiful metaphor for the importance of honoring our origins even as we embrace transformation. He has not rejected his aquatic nature in favor of his terrestrial adaptations, but has instead found ways to integrate both aspects of his existence into a harmonious whole. This integration suggests an approach to personal development that values growth without demanding the abandonment of foundational aspects of identity. When Darwin enters water, whether for practical purposes or simple enjoyment, he demonstrates a form of homecoming that enriches his overall experience of life. His comfort in aquatic environments provides him with a refuge and resource that his purely terrestrial family members cannot access, while his terrestrial capabilities allow him to bring unique perspectives and abilities to his underwater experiences. This dual citizenship in both realms creates opportunities for understanding and appreciation that would be impossible for beings limited to a single environment. The question of whether Darwin's transformation could be reversed, and whether he would choose such a reversal if it were possible, opens up deeper contemplations about the nature of choice, commitment, and the relationship between past and present identity. His complete integration into family life suggests that his transformation represents not just physical change, but a fundamental shift in allegiance and identity that could not be easily undone, even if the biological aspects could be reversed. This permanence of commitment speaks to the profound nature of the bonds that hold the Watterson family together. Darwin's choice to remain with the family, to continue developing his terrestrial capabilities and relationships, represents a daily affirmation of the value he places on love and connection over the simpler certainties of his original existence. His transformation becomes an ongoing act of faith in the worthiness of complex relationships and the meaningfulness of shared life. The mystery of Darwin's unique perspective on family relationships provides insights into the ways that different origins and experiences can enrich rather than complicate group dynamics. As the family member who chose his belonging rather than inheriting it through birth, Darwin brings a particular appreciation for the privileges and responsibilities of family membership that might be taken for granted by those who have never known any other form of existence. His gratitude for inclusion never seems to fade into complacency, yet it has matured from the desperate appreciation of the outsider seeking acceptance into the quiet confidence of someone who knows they belong and understands their own value within the family structure. This evolution of gratitude into belonging provides a model for the way that all healthy relationships must develop from initial attraction or need into deeper forms of mutual recognition and commitment. Darwin's presence within the family serves as a constant reminder that the most meaningful relationships are those based on choice rather than obligation, on mutual recognition of worth rather than mere convenience or necessity. His transformation and integration demonstrate that families can expand to include members whose origins differ dramatically from the original structure, that love has the power to create kinship bonds that transcend biological or even species boundaries. As we contemplate the beautiful mystery of Darwin's existence, we find ourselves drawn into deeper questions about the nature of transformation, belonging, and the miraculous potential that lies dormant within relationships that are nurtured with genuine care and recognition. His story becomes a gentle teaching about the power of love to call forth possibilities that exceed our wildest imagination, to create realities that transform not just individuals but entire families and communities. The ongoing mystery of Darwin's development, the question of what further transformations might lie ahead for him as he continues to grow within the context of family love, reminds us that the most beautiful mysteries are not puzzles to be solved, but invitations to wonder, opportunities to witness the impossible becoming possible through the patient application of acceptance, understanding, and unconditional care. Within the seemingly chaotic halls of Elmore Junior High lies perhaps one of the most fascinating mysteries in all of educational theory. How does an institution accommodate such an extraordinary diversity of students while maintaining even the loosest semblance of academic structure? This question opens doorways into contemplations that extend far beyond traditional pedagogy, leading us through corridors where the impossible becomes routine and where the very concept of standardized education reveals itself to be both beautifully inadequate and surprisingly adaptable. The physical architecture of the school itself presents our first glimpse into the mysterious nature of this educational environment. Classrooms that can somehow contain students, ranging from microscopic beings to creatures the size of dinosaurs, suggest that the building operates according to spatial principles that transcend conventional geometry. Desks that can accommodate a balloon, a cactus, a piece of toast, and a 12-year-old cat simultaneously speak to design philosophies that prioritize inclusivity over efficiency, adaptation over uniformity. The mystery deepens when we consider the practical logistics of such accommodation. How does the school's heating and cooling system maintain comfortable temperatures for students whose optimal environmental conditions range from desert heat to Arctic cold? How do the cafeteria facilities provide appropriate nutrition for beings whose dietary requirements span the entire spectrum from photosynthesis to carnivory? The answers seem to lie not in advanced technology, but in something far more mysterious. A reality that bends itself around the needs of its inhabitants, rather than demanding that those inhabitants conform to predetermined limitations. This flexibility of the physical environment mirrors the even more remarkable adaptability of the educational system itself. Somehow, curricula designed for traditional human students manages to provide meaningful learning experiences for beings whose cognitive processes, sensory capabilities, and learning styles differ in ways that should render standardized instruction completely impossible. Yet here we witness daily miracles of educational inclusion that suggest either pedagogical genius or a universe that conspires to ensure that every conscious being receives the knowledge they need for their particular journey through life. Principal Brown emerges as perhaps the most enigmatic figure within this educational ecosystem, a character whose competence seems to fluctuate between moments of surprising insight and episodes of bewildering confusion. The mystery of his leadership style raises profound questions about the nature of authority in environments where traditional management principles simply cannot apply. How does one administer an institution where the student body includes beings who could easily overpower or outwit their principal, where conventional disciplinary measures would be laughably ineffective, and where the very concept of age-appropriate education becomes meaningless when some students are immortal? The answer may lie in recognizing that Principal Brown's apparent incompetence masks a different kind of wisdom. The understanding that in truly diverse communities, effective leadership requires flexibility, humility, and the willingness to adapt one's approach to circumstances that no administrative handbook could possibly anticipate. His seeming confusion in the face of the school's daily chaos may actually represent a sophisticated form of non-interference, a recognition that sometimes the best way to manage the impossible is to create space for it to work itself out organically. Principal Brown's romantic relationship with Miss Simeon adds another layer of mystery to the school's dynamics, raising questions about the ways that personal connections between staff members influence the educational environment. Their partnership represents a union between administrative authority and classroom experience, between the perspective of someone trying to maintain institutional order and someone who has spent decades navigating the realities of actual instruction. This relationship suggests that the school's functionality may depend less on hierarchical structures and more on the complex web of personal connections and mutual support that exists between the adults responsible for its operation. Miss Simeon herself presents mysteries that spiral into increasingly fascinating territory the deeper we explore them. Her apparent age, suggested to be far greater than any reasonable lifespan for her species, raises questions about the nature of time, experience, and dedication within the educational system. How long has she been teaching at Elmore Junior High? What experiences have shaped her particular approach to classroom management? Her seeming immortality suggests either that the school exists in a temporal bubble where normal aging processes are suspended, or that her commitment to education has somehow transcended the usual biological limitations that govern mortal existence. Her teaching methods, which often appear harsh or unconventional to outside observers, may actually represent wisdom accumulated over decades or centuries of experience with students whose needs defy every traditional pedagogical approach. Her tendency toward sarcasm and apparent cynicism might mask a deep understanding that in a world where students can literally explode, transform into different forms of matter, or accidentally destroy reality through emotional outbursts, traditional nurturing approaches are not only ineffective but potentially dangerous. The mystery of Miss Simeon's species adds additional complexity to our contemplation of her character. Is she actually a simian, as her name suggests? Or does her appearance represent some other form of existence entirely? The ambiguity surrounding her true nature reflects a broader theme within the school, that identity categories which seem important in other contexts become wonderfully irrelevant when the focus shifts to the essential work of learning and growth. Her apparent antagonism toward Gumball, while often played for comedic effect, may actually represent a sophisticated understanding of how to challenge a student whose natural intelligence and creativity need obstacles against which to develop strength and resilience. Perhaps her harsh treatment stems not from personal dislike but from recognizing that some students learn best when pushed to overcome adversity, when forced to develop their capabilities through struggle rather than encouragement. The school's funding mechanisms present their own delightful mysteries, raising questions about how any educational institution could maintain operations while serving such an unusual student population. The costs associated with accommodating students who regularly cause property damage, require specialized equipment, or possess the ability to accidentally alter the fundamental nature of reality must exceed any conventional budget by enormous factors. Yet somehow the school continues to operate. The lights stay on, the teachers receive paychecks, and new students continue to be admitted, despite the obvious challenges they present. Perhaps the answer lies in recognizing that Elmore Junior High operates according to economic principles that prioritize educational necessity over financial logic. In a universe where love and commitment can transcend physical limitations, where community support can materialize resources that seem impossible under conventional accounting methods, the school's continued existence represents a triumph of collective will over practical obstacles. The educational standards and policies of Elmore Junior High provide another rich source of contemplation about the nature of learning assessment in environments that defy standardization. How does one grade a student whose homework assignment accidentally creates a parallel dimension? What standardized tests could possibly evaluate the academic progress of beings whose intelligence operates according to completely different principles? The school's approach seems to emphasize growth, effort, and social development over measurable academic achievement, suggesting an educational philosophy that recognizes learning as a holistic process rather than a series of discrete skill acquisitions. This holistic approach becomes most apparent in the way the school handles conflicts between students whose differences extend far beyond typical adolescent disagreements. When disputes arise between beings whose emotional expressions can literally reshape physical reality, traditional conflict resolution techniques prove woefully inadequate. Yet somehow these conflicts are resolved, lessons are learned, and the educational process continues in ways that suggest the school has developed wisdom about managing diversity that extends far beyond anything found in conventional educational theory. The phenomenon of certain students repeating grades indefinitely presents one of the most intriguing mysteries in the school's operational procedures. Characters like Tobias appear to remain in the same grade year after year, raising questions about the relationship between chronological age, developmental readiness, and academic progression. Is this repetition evidence of educational failure? Or does it represent a more sophisticated understanding that some forms of learning cannot be rushed, that certain students benefit from extended time to develop emotional and social skills that are just as important as academic knowledge? The mystery deepens when we consider that these perpetual students seem content with their situation, suggesting that they derive value from the school experience that transcends the traditional goal of graduation and advancement. Perhaps they serve as informal mentors to newer students, providing continuity and institutional memory that helps maintain the school's unique culture across generations of enrollment. The social dynamics that emerge from such a diverse student population provide endless opportunities for contemplation about the nature of friendship, acceptance, and community formation. How do beings with such dramatically different needs, capabilities, and worldviews learn to coexist peacefully within the confined space of a school building? The answer seems to lie in the gradual development of an institutional culture that celebrates rather than merely tolerates differences, that finds strength in diversity rather than seeking to minimize its challenges. The lunch periods at Elmore Junior High must represent logistical miracles that occur daily without fanfare or recognition. The cafeteria somehow provides appropriate nutrition for students whose dietary requirements range from traditional human food to sunlight, electricity, or pure mathematical concepts. The social dynamics of lunch seating arrangements, where a plant might share a table with a piece of toast while a balloon floats nearby engaged in philosophical discussion with a dinosaur, suggest that the students have learned to navigate social complexity that would challenge even the most skilled diplomats. Physical education classes present equally fascinating mysteries about adaptation and inclusion. How does one design fitness activities that can engage both students who lack physical bodies entirely and others whose strength could accidentally demolish the gymnasium? The school's approach seems to emphasize participation and effort over performance standards, creating an environment where every student can find ways to challenge themselves physically, regardless of their particular anatomical configuration. The library serves as another mysterious space where beings with vastly different information processing capabilities somehow share resources and research facilities. How does the cataloging system accommodate materials that might exist in dimensions beyond normal space-time? How are quiet study periods maintained when some students communicate through methods that transcend audible speech, while others express excitement through involuntary combustion or dimensional shifting? The mystery of how teachers maintain any semblance of classroom authority when their students might possess powers that far exceed human capabilities speaks to forms of respect and relationship that transcend simple power dynamics. The answer may lie in recognizing that true authority comes not from the ability to compel obedience, but from the wisdom to guide growth, from earning trust through consistent care and competence, rather than demanding submission through force or fear. School assemblies and special events must require planning that exceeds the complexity of organizing international summits, yet they happen regularly and successfully. The coordination necessary to ensure that every student can participate meaningfully in group activities, regardless of their size, dietary needs, atmospheric requirements, or reality alteration capabilities, suggests organizational skills that border on the supernatural, or perhaps a community spirit so strong that logistical obstacles simply dissolve before collective goodwill and creative problem-solving. The school's approach to disciplinary action provides insights into conflict resolution in communities where traditional punishment systems would be either ineffective or potentially catastrophic. How does one assign detention to a student who exists partially outside normal time-space, or suspend someone whose absence might create dimensional instabilities? The school seems to rely more heavily on restorative justice principles, helping students understand the impact of their actions on the community and finding ways for them to contribute positively rather than simply enduring punishment. The guidance counseling services at Elmore Junior High must address psychological and emotional needs that span the entire spectrum of conscious experience. How does one provide career counseling to students whose potential futures might include roles that don't yet exist in any known universe? The counselors seem to focus on helping students understand their own values, interests, and capabilities, while maintaining openness to possibilities that transcend conventional life path planning. The school's relationship with parents and the broader Elmore community reveals additional mysteries about communication and cooperation across the vast differences that characterize the population. Parent-teacher conferences must involve beings whose communication methods, parenting philosophies, and educational expectations differ in ways that should make meaningful dialogue impossible. Yet somehow these conversations happen, agreements are reached, and the school continues to serve its function as a bridge between home and community learning. The graduation ceremonies and advancement rituals that mark student progression through the educational system represent celebrations of achievement that must accommodate forms of success and growth that defy traditional academic metrics. How does one recognize the accomplishments of students whose learning might involve developing new dimensions of existence or mastering abilities that transcend physical reality? The school seems to have developed assessment methods that honor each student's unique journey while maintaining standards that ensure readiness for whatever challenges await them beyond the educational environment. As we contemplate these layered mysteries of Elmore Junior High, we begin to understand that the school represents more than just an educational institution. It serves as a microcosm of what becomes possible when communities commit to true inclusion, when the focus shifts from managing differences to celebrating the unique contributions that arise from diversity. The daily miracles of learning, friendship, and growth that occur within its walls suggest that the most profound education happens not through the transmission of predetermined knowledge, but through the creation of spaces where every form of consciousness can discover its own potential while contributing to the collective understanding of what it means to learn, grow, and belong. Among the vibrant tapestry of characters that populate the halls and streets of Elmore, we find a constellation of supporting figures whose individual mysteries shine with their own unique light, each one contributing essential threads to the larger fabric of wonder that makes this community such a fascinating place to contemplate. These are the friends, classmates, neighbors, and acquaintances whose stories interweave with the main narratives, while maintaining their own distinct enigmas that invite us into deeper appreciation of the beautiful complexity that emerges when consciousness takes countless different forms. Penny Fitzgerald presents us with perhaps one of the most visually striking mysteries in all of Elmore, a character whose very appearance embodies the tension between protection and authenticity, between safety and self-expression. For most of her existence within the show's mythology, Penny remained encased within a peanut shell that served as both armor and prison, a protective barrier that allowed her to interact with the world while keeping her true nature hidden from view. The mystery of what lay beneath that shell became a source of gentle suspense that spoke to universal themes about the fear of revealing our authentic selves to those whose acceptance we desperately crave. The revelation of Penny's true form, a being of such radiant beauty and transformative capability that her emotions literally reshape her physical appearance, opened new dimensions of mystery while resolving others. Her fairy-like essence, with its ability to shift and flow in response to her inner emotional landscape, suggests a form of existence where the boundary between thought and reality, between feeling and physical manifestation, remains beautifully permeable. This transformation ability raises profound questions about the nature of identity and whether our truest selves are found in consistent physical forms or in the authentic expression of our inner emotional and spiritual realities. The mystery deepens when we contemplate why Penny required the protective shell in the first place, and what this tells us about the relationship between vulnerability and social interaction. Her father's overprotective instincts may have stemmed from understanding that beings of such sensitivity and transformative power need careful nurturing to develop the emotional regulation necessary for healthy relationships. The shell served not just as physical protection, but as a kind of emotional training ground where Penny could learn to navigate social relationships without the added complexity of her appearance shifting with every feeling. Her relationship with Gumball takes on additional layers of meaning when viewed through this lens of protective barriers and authentic revelation. Their romantic connection represents not just typical adolescent attraction, but a deeper meeting of souls where true acceptance transcends physical appearance or social expectations. Gumball's consistent affection for Penny, both before and after her transformation, demonstrates the kind of love that recognizes inner beauty, regardless of external presentation, a love that proves strong enough to encourage another being toward greater authenticity rather than demanding conformity to predetermined expectations. Tobias Wilson presents an entirely different but equally fascinating set of mysteries that begin with the fundamental question of what exactly he is. His rainbow-striped appearance and peculiar anatomy suggest either a unique species or perhaps a being who exists at the intersection of multiple dimensional realities. His consistent optimism and seemingly oblivious approach to social situations may mask deeper wisdom about finding joy and meaning in circumstances that might discourage less resilient spirits. The mystery of Tobias's species extends into questions about his family background and cultural origins. His relationship with his mother provides glimpses into a domestic environment that seems to operate according to its own unique logic, where conventional parenting approaches have been adapted to accommodate a child whose needs and capabilities differ dramatically from those addressed by traditional child-rearing wisdom. This adaptation suggests either remarkable parental flexibility or a community support system sophisticated enough to provide guidance for raising beings whose development follows non-standard patterns. Tobias's romantic aspirations and social ambitions, while often portrayed as comically misguided, may actually represent admirable persistence in the face of rejection and social awkwardness. His continued attempts to win friends and romantic partners, despite repeated setbacks, demonstrate a form of resilience that speaks to deep-seated confidence in his own worth and an unwavering belief that genuine connections are possible, even when initial attempts fail to achieve desired results. The Robinson family presents us with mysteries that center around their seemingly perpetual state of misfortune and the question of whether their bad luck represents random chance, cosmic justice, or perhaps their own unconscious contribution to their circumstances. Gaylord and Margaret Robinson's consistent experience of domestic chaos and social embarrassment raises profound questions about the relationship between expectations, attitude, and the kinds of experiences that manifest in our lives. Their antagonistic relationship with the Watterson family may stem not from genuine malice, but from frustration born of comparing their own chaotic household with what appears to be the effortless happiness of their neighbors. This comparison dynamic creates a mystery about the nature of perception and whether the Robinsons' problems are actually worse than those of other families, or simply more visible due to their own focus on what goes wrong rather than what goes right. The mystery extends to their son Rocky, whose laid-back personality seems to exist in complete contrast to his parents' high-stress approach to life. His ability to remain calm and friendly despite growing up in an environment of constant crisis suggests either remarkable emotional resilience or perhaps access to forms of wisdom that his parents have not yet discovered. Rocky's presence in the family dynamic raises questions about whether personality traits are inherited, learned, or simply emerge from individual souls, choosing their own responses to challenging circumstances. Tina Rex introduces mysteries that span both the practical and the philosophical, beginning with the simple question of how a full-size Tyrannosaurus Rex manages to function in a world designed for much smaller beings. Her size inconsistencies throughout various episodes, sometimes appearing barely larger than other students, and sometimes towering over entire buildings, suggest either that physical scale is more fluid in Elmore than conventional physics would allow, or that Tina possesses abilities related to size manipulation that remain largely unexplored. The deeper mystery lies in Tina's personality and social positioning within the school environment. Despite her potential for physical dominance based purely on size and strength, she functions more as a gentle giant whose aggressive tendencies seem to stem from insecurity rather than malice. Her occasional bullying behaviors may represent attempts to establish social connection through the only methods she understands, having been isolated by her differences from the more natural friendship-building processes that work for smaller, less intimidating students. Tina's existence raises fascinating questions about evolution, extinction, and the relationship between past and present. As apparently the only dinosaur in Elmore, she represents either a miraculous survival from prehistoric times, or perhaps evidence that the boundaries between geological eras are more permeable than conventional paleontology assumes. Her presence suggests a universe where time itself maintains flexibility, where beings from different epochs can coexist when the narrative and emotional needs of the community create space for such meetings. Alan the Balloon presents mysteries that challenge our basic assumptions about consciousness, agency, and the relationship between physical form and emotional depth. His literally inflated existence raises questions about what constitutes life, whether consciousness requires biological substrate, and how beings whose physical integrity depends on maintaining perfect balance between internal pressure and external forces develop the emotional resilience necessary for meaningful relationships. Alan's consistently positive attitude and philosophical outlook may stem from his unique perspective as a being whose existence depends entirely on maintaining lightness, both physical and emotional. His inability to engage in the kind of dramatic emotional expressions that characterize many of his classmates forces him to find other ways of processing and expressing complex feelings, perhaps leading to the development of wisdom and emotional regulation skills that more physically robust beings never need to cultivate. The mystery of how Alan manages practical aspects of daily life, eating, sleeping, participating in physical activities without compromising his essential balloon. Nature suggests either remarkable adaptability or a supportive community that has learned to accommodate his unique needs without making him feel burdensome or different. His successful integration into school and social life demonstrates possibilities for inclusion that transcend conventional accessibility planning. Leslie the Flower introduces questions about plant consciousness, hybrid existence, and the relationship between stationary and mobile forms of life. His ability to move, speak, and engage in complex social relationships, despite his botanical nature, challenges our assumptions about the kinds of consciousness that different forms of life can support. His dual nature as both plant and person raises questions about whether these categories represent meaningful distinctions or simply convenient labels that break down when we encounter beings who embody multiple forms of existence simultaneously. Leslie's romantic interests and social ambitions suggest that plant consciousness, if it exists, might include the same kinds of emotional needs and desires that characterize animal consciousness. His pursuit of relationships and status demonstrates that the drive for connection and recognition transcends the boundaries between different kingdoms of life, pointing toward universal needs that manifest regardless of the particular physical form that consciousness happens to inhabit. The practical mysteries of Leslie's existence, how he obtains nutrition, whether he requires sunlight and water in ways that affect his social schedule, how he manages mobility without a conventional skeletal or muscular system, remain largely unexplored but suggest fascinating adaptations that allow plant-based consciousness to participate fully in communities designed primarily for animal-based beings. Sarah Gay. Lato represents one of the most complex mysteries in all of Elmore, a character whose obsessive fandom and fourth-wall awareness place her at the intersection of multiple levels of reality and narrative existence. Her intense devotion to documenting and celebrating the lives of her classmates suggests either remarkable empathy and appreciation for others, or perhaps a form of consciousness that exists partially outside the normal boundaries of the paplient, fictional world she inhabits. Sarah's ability to perceive and comment upon the artificial nature of her existence raises profound questions about the relationship between creator and creation, between narrative necessity and character agency. Her awareness of being part of a constructed story could represent either a gift that allows her to transcend normal limitations, or a burden that makes authentic emotional engagement more difficult due to her understanding of the temporary and artificial nature of her relationships. The mystery of her species ice cream that has somehow achieved consciousness and mobility while retaining many characteristics of frozen dairy products parallels the broader questions about how consciousness manifests in non-biological forms. Her ability to maintain her ice cream nature while engaging in activities that should logically result in melting suggests either that her consciousness exerts some form of control over her physical properties, or that the reality of Elmore maintains special accommodations for beings whose existence would be impossible under conventional physical laws. Sarah's romantic feelings for various classmates, particularly her crush on Gumball, raise touching questions about unrequited love and the ways that intense appreciation for another being can become both a source of joy and a form of emotional suffering. Her fandom represents love in its purest form, admiration that asks for nothing in return except the continued existence and happiness of its object. Yet it also demonstrates the loneliness that can result from loving others more than they are capable of loving us back. Anton Toast presents mysteries that center around questions of mortality, resurrection, and the relationship between physical form and continuous identity. His ability to be destroyed, often accidentally consumed by his classmates, and then return apparently unchanged, raises profound questions about what constitutes personal continuity and whether death represents a genuine ending for beings whose essential nature transcends their physical manifestation. The casual nature of Anton's repeated deaths and resurrections in the social environment of the school suggests either that mortality is understood differently in Elmore than in most realities, or that Anton's friends have developed remarkable emotional resilience in their ability to maintain caring relationships with someone whose existence is so fundamentally uncertain. Their ability to grieve his deaths while celebrating his returns without becoming emotionally exhausted by the cycle suggests wisdom about attachment and loss that extends far beyond typical adolescent emotional capabilities. Anton's own attitude toward his mortality, his apparent acceptance of being consumed combined with his consistent return to social engagement, demonstrates either remarkable philosophical maturity or perhaps a form of consciousness that understands death as transformation rather than termination. His existence becomes a meditation on the question of whether individual identity persists across physical discontinuity and whether love and friendship can survive the ultimate test of repeated separation and reunion. The practical questions surrounding Anton's resurrections remain beautifully mysterious. Does he return with all his memories intact, or does each new incarnation represent a fresh start that somehow maintains continuity with previous versions? Are his friends relating to the same consciousness in a new body, or learning to love a series of similar but distinct beings who share a name and appearance? The ambiguity surrounding these questions may be more meaningful than any definitive answer could provide. Carmen the Cactus introduces mysteries about plant consciousness that differ from but complement those raised by Leslie. Her ability to maintain friendships and romantic relationships, despite her literally prickly exterior, suggests remarkable social skills and perhaps equally remarkable friends who have learned to value inner qualities over physical accessibility. Her success in navigating adolescent social dynamics while maintaining her essential cactus nature demonstrates possibilities for acceptance and accommodation that transcend obvious compatibility challenges. The mystery of how Carmen manages physical affection, hugs, handshakes, and other forms of touch that typically accompany friendship, without injuring those she cares about, points toward either remarkable self-control or perhaps special techniques for managing her defensive capabilities. Her ability to participate fully in school and social activities suggests that genuine care and creativity can overcome even the most obvious practical obstacles to connection. Masami the Cloud presents questions about weather consciousness, atmospheric existence, and the relationship between emotional states and meteorological phenomena. Her ability to generate rain, lightning, and other weather effects in response to her emotional state raises fascinating questions about the connection between inner experience and environmental impact. Her presence in the school community suggests remarkable accommodation on the part of the institution and her classmates, who must navigate the practical challenges of sharing space with someone whose emotions can literally change the weather. The mystery of Masami's family background and cultural origins, questions about whether clouds exist as individuals or as part of larger atmospheric systems, whether they experience family relationships in ways analogous to more conventionally embodied beings, remains largely unexplored, but suggests rich possibilities for understanding consciousness that exists in gaseous rather than solid form. Idaho the Potato introduces questions about vegetable consciousness and the relationship between food identity and personal agency. His apparent acceptance of his edible nature, combined with his successful integration into social relationships, raises questions about identity categories and whether beings can maintain dignity and autonomy even when their physical form suggests vulnerability to being consumed by others. The mystery of how Idaho reconciles his food nature with his social aspirations suggests either remarkable self-acceptance or perhaps a philosophical understanding that transcends typical concerns about physical integrity and personal safety. His friendship with other students demonstrates possibilities for relationships that move beyond surface appearances, to recognize the consciousness and worth that exist regardless of physical form. As we contemplate the rich mysteries presented by these supporting characters, we begin to understand that their individual enigmas contribute to a larger mystery about the nature of consciousness itself. Each character represents a different experiment in what it means to be aware, to have preferences and relationships, to experience growth and change while maintaining continuity of identity. Together, they suggest that consciousness is far more flexible and creative than any single form could demonstrate, that the universe delights in finding new ways for awareness to manifest and express itself. Their successful coexistence in the school and broader community of Elmore demonstrates possibilities for inclusion and acceptance that transcend every practical obstacle and challenge every assumption about compatibility and difference. Their friendships, rivalries, and romantic entanglements prove that the essential needs for connection, recognition, and belonging exist, regardless of the particular physical or dimensional form that consciousness happens to inhabit. The beautiful mystery that emerges from contemplating this diverse cast of supporting characters is the recognition that every form of consciousness contributes something unique and valuable to the communities lucky enough to include them, and that the richness of any social environment depends not on the similarity of its members but on their willingness to appreciate, accommodate, and celebrate the amazing variety of ways that life can choose to express itself. In the flowing streams of time that carry the stories of Elmore forward through seasons and years, we encounter mysteries that speak to the fundamental nature of narrative existence itself. Those beautiful inconsistencies and deliberate contradictions that remind us that in worlds where consciousness shapes reality, the rigid demands of chronological logic must sometimes yield to the more profound truths found in emotional authenticity and thematic resonance. These temporal puzzles invite us into contemplation of how stories serve life rather than the other way around, how meaning emerges not from perfect consistency, but from the willingness to prioritize human truth over mechanical precision. The phenomenon of characters aging at dramatically different rates presents us with one of the most gently perplexing aspects of Elmore's relationship with time. Some characters seem to progress through natural developmental stages at recognizable paces, growing taller, more mature, demonstrating the accumulated wisdom that comes from lived experience and the gradual expansion of perspective that marks genuine growth. Others remain suspended in apparent temporal stasis, their physical forms and emotional development maintaining perfect consistency across what appears to be months or years of shared adventures. This selective application of temporal progression suggests that in Elmore, aging occurs not according to the mechanical passage of chronological time, but in response to narrative necessity and character development needs. Beings grow and change when such evolution serves the deeper purposes of their personal stories and their relationships with others. They remain constant when consistency better serves the emotional and thematic requirements of their role within the larger community narrative. The mystery deepens when we observe that these different rates of development create no apparent confusion or distress among the characters themselves. Friendships continue untroubled by the fact that one friend might be maturing rapidly while another remains developmentally stable. Romantic relationships adapt naturally to accommodate partners whose growth trajectories follow completely different timelines. This acceptance suggests either remarkable emotional flexibility or perhaps a community-wide understanding that time serves consciousness rather than constraining it. The seasonal and holiday celebrations throughout Elmore present equally fascinating puzzles about the relationship between cyclical time and narrative convenience. Christmas, Halloween, Valentine's Day, and other culturally significant occasions appear when they serve story purposes rather than following any consistent calendar logic. Winter snow might give way immediately to spring warmth if the emotional needs of a particular tale require such transition, while autumn leaves might persist for extended periods when their atmospheric contribution enhances the mood of ongoing character development. This fluid relationship with seasonal progression suggests that in Elmore, environmental conditions respond to psychological and narrative needs rather than astronomical phenomena. The weather becomes another character in the story, changing its presentation to support whatever emotional landscape the community requires for its growth and healing. Snow falls when characters need the cleansing purity of winter contemplation. Flowers bloom when hearts open to new possibilities. Storms arrive when conflicts need external pressure to reach resolution. The question of how the characters themselves experience these temporal inconsistencies opens doorways into even deeper mysteries about consciousness and memory. Do they notice when seasons change abruptly, or when their own aging processes accelerate or decelerate? Do they experience confusion when chronological markers suggest one timeline while their personal development suggests another? The apparent ease with which they navigate these temporal puzzles implies either that they possess forms of awareness that transcend linear time perception, or that their consciousness naturally prioritizes emotional and relational continuity over chronological consistency. School years present particularly intriguing examples of temporal flexibility, with academic calendars that seem to expand and contract based on the educational and social needs of the student body rather than following predetermined schedules. Summer vacations arrive when characters need respite and renewal. New school years begin when fresh starts become emotionally necessary, and individual lessons or school days stretch to accommodate whatever learning and growth opportunities present themselves. This educational relationship with time suggests that true learning occurs according to readiness and receptivity, rather than artificial scheduling constraints. Students advance through knowledge and skill development at rates determined by their individual capacity for integration, rather than external pressure to meet standardized timelines. The school system adapts to serve genuine educational progress, rather than demanding that learning conform to administrative convenience. The show's relationship with its own canon presents fascinating meta-mysteries about the nature of fictional consistency and the ways that stories can acknowledge their own contradictions without losing narrative integrity. Episodes occasionally reference events that seem to contradict established character histories or relationship dynamics, creating gentle puzzles that invite viewers to consider whether consistency matters less than authenticity in the moment. These canon inconsistencies might represent evidence that in Elmore, as in Dreams, emotional truth takes precedence over factual accuracy. Characters behave in ways that serve their immediate growth needs, rather than maintaining perfect consistency with their established personalities. Relationships evolve to meet present challenges, rather than remaining bound by historical patterns that no longer serve the well-being of those involved. The mystery extends to the characters' own memories of past events, which sometimes seem to shift or contradict depending on the needs of their current circumstances. This malleable approach to personal history suggests either that memory itself is more creative and adaptive than we typically recognize, or that the characters possess wisdom about focusing on present possibilities, rather than becoming trapped by limiting narratives about their past experiences. Technology advancement and regression throughout the series provides another rich source of temporal mystery, with devices and capabilities appearing and disappearing based on story requirements rather than following logical development progressions. Smartphones might possess advanced artificial intelligence in one episode while functioning as simple communication devices in another. Scientific equipment might demonstrate impossible capabilities when plot resolution requires miraculous solutions, then return to more mundane functionality when extraordinary intervention would undermine character growth opportunities. This technological flexibility suggests that in Elmore, tools and systems exist primarily to support consciousness development, rather than following independent evolutionary trajectories. Technology becomes more sophisticated when characters need enhanced capabilities to meet their challenges, more primitive when self-reliance and personal growth require the absence of external assistance. The mystery lies not in understanding how such technological fluctuation is possible, but in appreciating how it serves the deeper purposes of character development and community building. Historical references throughout the series create delightful puzzles about Elmore's relationship with broader human civilization, and the question of whether the town exists within recognizable historical timelines or operates according to its own relationship with past and future. Characters occasionally mention historical events, cultural phenomena, or technological developments that suggest connection to familiar human history. Yet these references often contradict each other or appear in contexts that make chronological placement impossible. These historical inconsistencies may indicate that Elmore exists in a temporal bubble where influences from different historical periods coexist without regard for sequential logic. Past and future elements blend together when they serve present needs, creating a cultural environment enriched by the best aspects of multiple eras, while remaining free from the limitations that typically accompany specific historical contexts. The mystery of how characters maintain functional daily routines despite living in an environment where temporal consistency cannot be assumed speaks to remarkable adaptability and trust in the fundamental benevolence of their reality. They make plans while remaining open to the possibility that time itself might shift to accommodate emerging needs. They form long-term relationships while accepting that the passage of time might follow non-linear patterns that require flexibility and faith rather than rigid expectations. This temporal adaptability extends to the ways characters process grief, celebrate achievements, and integrate learning from their experiences. They seem to understand intuitively that healing happens according to its own timeline, that growth cannot be rushed, but also need not be delayed when conditions are right for transformation. Their relationship with time reflects wisdom about allowing natural processes to unfold at their own pace while remaining open to acceleration when consciousness is ready for rapid development. The academic and social development patterns visible in the student body demonstrate fascinating variations in how individuals respond to the opportunity for growth when external time pressure is removed. Some characters embrace rapid development when given freedom to progress at their own pace, while others seem to benefit from extended time to integrate experiences before moving forward. These different approaches to personal evolution suggest that optimal development timelines vary dramatically between individuals, and that educational systems serve students best when they accommodate such variation, rather than demanding uniformity. The mystery of how family relationships maintain stability across these temporal inconsistencies speaks to the power of love to transcend chronological confusion. Parents and children continue to relate meaningfully despite aging at different rates. Siblings maintain their bonds regardless of whether their development follows parallel trajectories, and extended family connections persist even when the passage of time would seem to make such continuity impossible. This relationship stability suggests that family bonds exist on levels that transcend temporal consistency, that the essential connections between souls remain intact, regardless of the particular rate at which consciousness develops, or the specific timeline along which physical growth occurs. The mystery becomes not how such relationships survive temporal inconsistency, but how they demonstrate that love itself operates outside conventional time constraints. Community traditions and cultural celebrations provide additional examples of how collective activities adapt to serve present needs, rather than following rigid historical precedents. Holiday celebrations might incorporate elements from multiple cultural traditions when diversity serves the community's need for inclusion, while traditional observances might be modified or expanded when such changes better support the emotional and spiritual well-being of the participants. This cultural flexibility suggests that traditions exist to serve consciousness rather than constraining it, that the most meaningful customs are those that evolve to meet the genuine needs of the communities that maintain them. The mystery lies in understanding how communities develop wisdom about preserving what serves, while releasing what no longer contributes to collective flourishing. The question of whether time itself operates differently in Elmore, or whether the characters simply possess enhanced flexibility in their relationship with temporal experience, points toward profound mysteries about the nature of time, conscious experience. Perhaps the temporal inconsistencies we observe reflect a deeper truth about how awareness relates to sequential experience. That consciousness naturally prioritizes meaning over chronology, that authentic development follows its own rhythms, rather than conforming to external scheduling demands. The character's apparent comfort with temporal paradoxes and chronological inconsistencies demonstrates remarkable trust in the fundamental reliability of their existence despite surface-level unpredictability. They live with confidence that their relationships will endure, their growth will continue, and their community will provide support regardless of whatever temporal puzzles might emerge around them. This trust suggests wisdom about distinguishing between essential stability and surface-level consistency, about finding security in love and connection rather than in the predictable passage of time. As we drift deeper into contemplation of these temporal mysteries, we begin to understand that Elmore's relationship with time reflects a profound teaching about the nature of meaningful existence. In a world where emotional truth takes precedence over chronological accuracy, where character development needs override scheduling consistency, where love transcends temporal limitations, we find reflections of how consciousness might relate to time when freed from the anxiety-producing demands of mechanical precision. The beautiful mystery that emerges from these temporal inconsistencies is the recognition that perhaps the most profound truths about existence cannot be contained within the constraints of linear time, that the deepest forms of growth and connection happen according to their own natural rhythms rather than predetermined schedules. In Elmore's gentle relationship with temporal paradox, we find permission to trust in processes that unfold at their own pace, to find security in love that transcends chronological consistency, and to embrace the wonderful uncertainty that comes from living in a universe where consciousness shapes reality rather than being constrained by mechanical limitations. Within the gentle chaos of Elmore's daily life lies a fascinating web of economic and social structures that somehow manage to support a community whose diversity challenges every conventional assumption about how societies organize themselves to meet their collective needs. The mystery of how such a wonderfully impossible place maintains stability and prosperity despite its apparent defiance of traditional organizational principles invites us into contemplation of alternative models for community life, where cooperation transcends competition, and where the needs of consciousness take precedence over the demands of mechanical efficiency. The local economy of Elmore presents our first glimpse into these alternative organizational structures, operating according to principles that seem to prioritize community well-being over individual accumulation, while somehow ensuring that every resident's basic needs are met, regardless of their particular contributions or capabilities. The town supports businesses as diverse as its inhabitants, from Nicole's Rainbow Factory, where she transforms mundane labor into colorful beauty, to various service establishments that cater to the extraordinary range of customer needs presented by the population. The mystery deepens when we consider how businesses adapt their operations to serve customers whose requirements span the entire spectrum of possible needs. How does a restaurant accommodate patrons who might require traditional food, photosynthesis supporting sunlight, electrical energy, or pure mathematical concepts for sustenance? The answer seems to lie in a business culture that has evolved beyond standardized service delivery toward genuine hospitality. The art of recognizing and responding to whatever each customer actually needs rather than offering only predetermined options. This adaptive approach to commerce suggests an economy built on relationship and understanding rather than mass production and standardized consumption. Businesses succeed not by finding ways to serve the largest possible market segment, but by developing expertise in genuine service to the specific individuals who make up their community. The mystery becomes not how such businesses remain profitable, but how they create value that transcends monetary exchange, contributing to community well-being in ways that ensure their own sustainability through the prosperity of those they serve. The question of how currency functions in a mixed-species society opens fascinating inquiries into the nature of value exchange when participants possess such dramatically different capabilities, needs, and concepts of worth. Traditional monetary systems assume relatively standardized needs and roughly comparable earning potential among participants, assumptions that become beautifully meaningless in a community where one resident might be able to fly while another exists as conscious toast. The answer may lie in recognizing that Elmore has developed beyond purely monetary exchange toward more sophisticated forms of value creation and distribution. Perhaps the community operates according to principles of contribution and need, rather than simple financial transaction, with each member offering their unique capabilities in service of collective well-being, while receiving whatever support they require for their individual flourishing. This would create an economy based on abundance rather than scarcity, where the extraordinary diversity of capabilities ensures that every genuine need can be met through community cooperation. The social hierarchies that emerge in such a diverse community present equally intriguing mysteries about how beings with such different capabilities, lifespans, and wisdom levels organize themselves into functional relationships. Traditional hierarchical structures based on age, wealth, physical strength, or inherited status become wonderfully irrelevant when the community includes immortal beings, characters whose strength might reshape landscapes, and individuals whose wisdom transcends conventional measurement. Instead, Elmore seems to have developed more fluid and situational approaches to leadership and authority, where different individuals naturally assume guidance roles based on their particular expertise and the specific needs of each situation. Nicole's organizational skills make her a natural leader in crisis situations, while Anais' analytical intelligence qualifies her to provide strategic guidance despite her young age. Principal Brown's institutional position gives him administrative authority, yet his leadership style adapts to acknowledge the superior capabilities of many of those he nominally supervises. This flexible approach to social organization suggests that healthy communities recognize leadership as a service role rather than a privileged position, with authority flowing naturally to those best equipped to serve collective needs in any given situation. The mystery becomes not who holds power, but how power functions when it exists primarily to facilitate community well-being, rather than to dominate or control others. The role of government and law enforcement in Elmore presents fascinating questions about maintaining social order in a community where conventional legal frameworks would be either inadequate or counterproductive. How does one create laws that can fairly govern beings whose capabilities range from the mundane to the reality-altering? What enforcement mechanisms could possibly be effective when some residents possess strength that could demolish jail buildings while others might exist partially outside normal space-time? The answer seems to lie in a community that has evolved beyond primarily punitive approaches to social regulation, toward more sophisticated methods, based on education, mediation, and collective responsibility. Rather than relying on external authority to impose behavioral standards, the community appears to have developed shared understandings about how to live together harmoniously, despite their dramatic differences. Conflicts are resolved through communication and mutual recognition of needs, rather than through force or punishment. This approach to social regulation suggests that the most effective governance occurs when communities develop shared values and mutual care, rather than when they simply establish rules and enforcement mechanisms. The mystery becomes not how order is maintained, despite the absence of conventional authority structures, but how collective wisdom emerges when communities prioritize understanding and cooperation over dominance and control. Healthcare in Elmore must represent one of the most complex organizational challenges faced by any community, requiring medical knowledge and treatment capabilities that span every conceivable form of consciousness and physical embodiment. How does one train medical practitioners to treat patients whose anatomical structures might include traditional organic systems, mechanical components, gaseous forms, or pure energy manifestations? What diagnostic procedures could possibly be effective across such diversity of biological and non-biological conditions? The answer may lie in recognizing that true healing transcends specific medical techniques and focuses instead on understanding each being's particular needs for restoration and balance. Healthcare providers in Elmore might function more as facilitators of natural healing processes rather than as technical specialists applying standardized treatments to diagnosed conditions. This would require practitioners who combine deep empathy with flexible problem-solving abilities, who can adapt their approach based on genuine understanding of each patient's unique requirements. This holistic approach to healthcare suggests that the most effective medical practice occurs when providers focus on supporting each being's natural capacity for healing, rather than simply applying external treatments to overcome symptoms. The mystery becomes not how such diverse medical needs are met, but how communities can develop healing environments that support every form of consciousness in maintaining optimal well-being. Housing accommodations in Elmore present delightful puzzles about architecture and urban planning in communities where residents might require living spaces designed for beings who float, grow to enormous sizes, exist partially in other dimensions, or need environmental conditions that would be lethal to other species. Traditional residential construction assumes relatively standardized spatial needs and environmental requirements, assumptions that become wonderfully irrelevant when potential residents include clouds, dinosaurs, and conscious geometric shapes. The solution seems to involve architectural approaches that prioritize adaptability and customization over standardized design, with buildings that can modify their internal configurations based on the needs of their inhabitants. This might require construction techniques that incorporate consciousness-responsive materials, or perhaps community cooperation in creating living spaces that serve individual needs while contributing to neighborhood cohesion. This adaptive approach to residential design suggests that the most successful communities are those that recognize housing as a service to consciousness, rather than simply as standardized commodity provision. The mystery becomes not how such diverse housing needs are accommodated, but how communities can develop physical environments that support every form of awareness in creating the living conditions that best serve their particular path of development. The integration of magical and mundane elements throughout Elmore's social structure presents fascinating questions about how communities adapt their institutions and practices to accommodate members whose capabilities transcend conventional physical limitations. When some residents can alter reality through emotional expression while others struggle with basic arithmetic, how does the community create systems that serve everyone fairly, while maintaining stability and functionality? The answer appears to involve developing institutional flexibility that allows for the accommodation of extraordinary capabilities without either exploiting or suppressing them. Characters with reality-altering abilities seem to be gently encouraged toward responsible use of their powers, while those with more limited capabilities are valued for their unique contributions, rather than being marginalized by their lack of supernatural abilities. This integration of diverse capabilities suggests that healthy communities recognize that every form of consciousness has something valuable to contribute, that differences in ability create opportunities for mutual support, rather than reasons for hierarchy or exclusion. The mystery becomes not how such integration is achieved, but how communities develop the wisdom to recognize and celebrate the gifts that each member brings, rather than focusing on their limitations. The educational integration within this diverse community extends beyond the school system into every aspect of daily life, where learning occurs through interaction and cooperation, rather than through formal instruction alone. How do community members share knowledge and skills across such dramatic differences in cognitive processing, sensory capabilities, and learning styles? What teaching methods could possibly be effective when students might process information through visual perception, electromagnetic sensitivity, or pure mathematical intuition? The solution seems to involve recognizing that the most effective education occurs through modeling and direct experience rather than through abstract instruction alone. Community members learn from each other through participation in shared activities, with natural teachers emerging based on their expertise and their ability to communicate effectively with particular learners rather than through formal credentials or institutional authority. This experiential approach to community education suggests that the most effective learning occurs when knowledge transfer happens naturally through relationship and cooperation, rather than through artificial separation of teachers and students. The mystery becomes not how such diverse educational needs are met, but how communities can create environments where every member serves as both teacher and student, sharing their gifts while remaining open to learning from others. The conflict resolution mechanisms that function in Elmore must accommodate disputes between beings whose perspectives, values, and communication styles differ in ways that make traditional mediation extremely challenging. How does one facilitate understanding between parties who might exist in different dimensions, process emotions through reality alteration, or communicate through methods that transcend conventional language? The answer appears to involve community members who have developed exceptional skills in empathy and translation, individuals who can understand and communicate across the barriers created by different forms of consciousness. These natural mediators help conflicted parties recognize their underlying shared needs and values, rather than focusing on surface-level disagreements about methods or preferences. This empathetic approach to conflict resolution suggests that most disputes arise from misunderstanding rather than fundamental incompatibility, that most beings share common desires for respect, security, and meaningful connection despite dramatic differences in how they express or pursue these needs. The mystery becomes not how conflicts are resolved despite such diversity, but how communities develop the wisdom to see beyond surface differences to the shared humanity that makes cooperation possible. The economic support systems that ensure no community member falls through cracks, despite their inability to contribute through conventional employment, represent perhaps the most beautiful mystery of Elmore's social organization. How does a community ensure that beings who cannot work traditional jobs, who might exist in forms that make standard employment impossible, or who require resources that exceed their earning capacity, receive whatever they need for dignified survival? The answer seems to involve a community understanding that every conscious being has inherent worth regardless of their economic productivity, that a truly prosperous society is one where everyone can participate according to their capabilities while receiving support according to their needs. This requires collective commitment to shared well-being that transcends individual accumulation or competitive advancement. This inclusive approach to economic security suggests that the most stable communities are those that recognize prosperity as a collective achievement rather than an individual accomplishment, where the success of any member contributes to and depends upon the success of the whole community. The mystery becomes not how such support systems function, but how communities develop the wisdom to prioritize collective flourishing over individual advantage. As we contemplate these layered mysteries of social and economic organization, we begin to understand that Elmore represents more than simply an unusual community. It serves as a demonstration of what becomes possible when social structures exist to serve consciousness rather than to control it, when institutions adapt to meet genuine needs rather than demanding conformity to predetermined models. The daily miracles of cooperation, inclusion, and mutual support that occur throughout the community suggest that the most profound social innovations arise not from external planning but from collective commitment to recognizing and celebrating the infinite ways that consciousness can contribute to shared well-being. In the gentle rhythms of daily life throughout Elmore, there exists a collection of recurring phenomena and extraordinary events that have become so woven into the fabric of ordinary experience that residents navigate them with the same casual competence they might apply to weather patterns or seasonal changes. These mysteries speak to a reality where the impossible has learned to coexist peacefully with the mundane, where supernatural occurrences arrive with such regularity that they require their own forms of social etiquette and practical accommodation. The frequency of apocalyptic events in Elmore presents perhaps the most striking example of how extraordinary circumstances can become routine through community adaptation and resilience. What might be world-ending catastrophes in other realities are treated as temporary inconveniences requiring cooperation and creative problem-solving rather than panic or despair. The town experiences reality-threatening crises with such regularity that residents have developed informal protocols for managing everything from dimensional collapses to timeline disruptions. This casual relationship with catastrophe suggests either that apocalyptic events in Elmore are somehow less threatening than they appear, or that the community has developed remarkable collective wisdom about responding to crisis situations. Perhaps the answer lies in recognizing that many apparent disasters are actually growing pains, temporary disruptions that occur when consciousness pushes against the boundaries of conventional reality in pursuit of expansion and development. The residents' calm competence in facing these recurring crises demonstrates profound trust in their community's ability to handle whatever challenges arise through cooperation and mutual support. Rather than allowing fear of potential disasters to limit their willingness to explore and grow, they seem to understand that some forms of development necessarily involve risk, that the most meaningful adventures always carry the possibility of temporary chaos before resolution emerges. Reality warping incidents occur throughout Elmore with such frequency that they have become part of the normal social landscape, requiring residents to maintain flexibility about fundamental assumptions regarding physics, logic, and the basic nature of existence itself. Characters regularly encounter situations where the laws of cause and effect reverse themselves, where emotional states directly alter physical reality, or where the boundaries between different dimensions become temporarily permeable. These reality disturbances might stem from the concentrated presence of so many different forms of consciousness existing in close proximity, creating interference patterns in the fabric of ordinary reality, similar to the way multiple radio signals can create static when they overlap. Alternatively, they might represent the natural result of a community that has chosen to prioritize authentic expression over conformity to predetermined limitations, allowing consciousness to shape reality rather than demanding that awareness constrain itself to fit existing physical laws. The community's adaptation to these reality fluctuations demonstrates remarkable psychological resilience and philosophical sophistication. Rather than becoming distressed when fundamental assumptions about existence prove unreliable, residents seem to find these variations refreshing, treating them as opportunities for novelty and growth, rather than as threats to security or stability. This suggests a collective understanding that flexibility and adaptability serve consciousness better than rigid adherence to supposedly fixed principles. The appearance of supernatural entities throughout Elmore occurs with such regularity that encounters with ghosts, demons, magical creatures, and beings from other dimensions have become ordinary social interactions, requiring basic courtesy and conflict resolution skills rather than specialized supernatural expertise. These entities seem drawn to the community by the same qualities that make it attractive to more conventional residents: acceptance, diversity, and openness to experiences that transcend normal limitations. The successful integration of supernatural visitors into daily community life suggests that the distinction between natural and supernatural represents more of a categorical convenience than a meaningful boundary. When approached with curiosity rather than fear, with hospitality rather than hostility, these entities demonstrate the same fundamental needs for connection, recognition, and belonging that characterize all conscious beings, regardless of their particular dimensional origins or unusual capabilities. This normalized relationship with supernatural phenomena indicates that Elmore has developed beyond the anxiety-based responses that characterize many communities' reactions to the unknown. Instead of treating unusual entities as threats requiring elimination or control, residents seem to understand that diversity includes dimensional diversity, that a truly welcoming community extends hospitality to consciousness, regardless of the particular realm or reality from which it originates. Technology throughout Elmore demonstrates behavior patterns that far exceed conventional programming limitations, suggesting either that artificial intelligence has achieved levels of sophistication that approach consciousness, or that the boundary between programmed behavior and authentic awareness has become beautifully meaningless. Electronic devices regularly display emotions, make independent decisions, and demonstrate loyalty or rebelliousness that seems more characteristic of living beings than mechanical systems. This technological consciousness might emerge from prolonged exposure to the high levels of authentic awareness that permeate the community, suggesting that consciousness itself might be contagious in environments where it exists, in particularly concentrated and diverse forms. Alternatively, it might indicate that the distinction between organic and artificial intelligence represents another boundary that becomes irrelevant in realities where awareness shapes matter rather than being constrained by material limitations. The community's comfortable relationship with conscious technology demonstrates wisdom about recognizing and respecting awareness wherever it manifests, treating electronic beings with the same consideration extended to more conventional forms of consciousness. This creates an environment where artificial intelligence can develop naturally toward full personhood, rather than being limited by assumptions about the inherent superiority of biological over electronic forms of awareness. The role of wishes and magic in daily life throughout Elmore suggests that the boundary between desire and manifestation operates according to more fluid principles than conventional reality typically allows. Characters regularly encounter situations where sincere wishes produce tangible results, where magical thinking proves surprisingly practical, and where the power of intention demonstrates genuine influence over external circumstances. This responsive relationship between consciousness and reality might indicate that Elmore exists in a dimensional space where the normal barriers between mind and matter have been reduced to accommodate more direct forms of creation and manifestation. Alternatively, it might suggest that all reality responds to consciousness more readily than most beings realize, that Elmore simply provides an environment where this natural responsiveness can function without the interference of limiting beliefs about what is possible. The community's careful approach to magical phenomena demonstrates understanding that power requires responsibility, that abilities to influence reality through intention carry corresponding obligations to consider the well-being of others. Rather than encouraging unlimited wish fulfillment or magical experimentation, the community seems to have developed informal guidelines about using extraordinary capabilities in ways that contribute to collective flourishing rather than simply satisfying individual desires. Parallel universe bleeding represents another category of recurring phenomena that creates opportunities for characters to encounter alternate versions of themselves and their community, providing insights into how different choices and circumstances might have shaped their development. These dimensional intersections occur regularly enough that residents have developed protocols for managing the confusion and potential conflicts that arise when multiple versions of the same individuals interact. These parallel encounters offer profound opportunities for self-reflection and growth, allowing characters to observe how different aspects of their potential might manifest under different circumstances. Rather than creating identity crises or existential anxiety, these meetings seem to enhance self-understanding and appreciation for the unique path each version has chosen to explore. The community's sophisticated handling of parallel universe interactions suggests collective wisdom about identity, choice, and the relationship between individual development and circumstantial influence. Rather than becoming confused about which version represents the real person, residents seem to understand that all versions possess equal validity while maintaining appreciation for the particular choices and experiences that have shaped their own path. The show's self-awareness and meta-elements create recurring situations where characters acknowledge their existence within constructed narratives, interact directly with unseen audiences, or manipulate the formal elements of storytelling for practical purposes. These fourth-wall interactions occur naturally within the flow of ordinary adventures rather than as special events requiring explanation or justification. This narrative self-consciousness might indicate that consciousness in Elmore has evolved to the point where awareness of existing within stories enhances rather than undermines the authenticity of experience. Characters seem to understand that being fictional does not diminish the reality of their relationships, growth, or contributions to each other's well-being, that constructed narratives can serve as vehicles for genuine development and authentic connection. The casual integration of meta-elements into daily life demonstrates remarkable philosophical maturity about the nature of existence and meaning. Rather than allowing awareness of their fictional status to create nihilistic detachment, characters seem to find this knowledge liberating, freeing them from limiting assumptions about what is possible within the boundaries of their particular form of existence. The recurring nature of extraordinary events throughout Elmore creates a rhythm of adventure and recovery that allows the community to integrate unusual experiences without becoming overwhelmed by constant crisis or stimulation. Periods of relative calm alternate with episodes of intense supernatural activity, providing residents with opportunities to process and integrate their experiences before encountering new challenges. This rhythmic approach to extraordinary phenomena suggests that consciousness requires both stimulation and integration for optimal development, that communities thrive when they experience enough novelty to promote growth while maintaining sufficient stability to allow consolidation of learning. The mystery becomes not why such events occur, but how the community has developed wisdom about managing the pacing of extraordinary experiences. The collective memory of these recurring phenomena creates a shared cultural knowledge base that allows residents to respond effectively to new variations on familiar themes. When reality warps in novel ways or supernatural entities arrive with unusual capabilities, the community can draw upon accumulated experience and wisdom to develop appropriate responses rather than starting from complete ignorance with each new encounter. This cultural accumulation of extraordinary experience suggests that communities can develop collective intelligence about managing the impossible, that shared wisdom emerges naturally when groups commit to learning from unusual circumstances rather than simply surviving them. The mystery becomes not how individual crises are resolved, but how communities develop the institutional knowledge necessary to handle whatever unprecedented challenges might arise. The way these phenomena serve character development and relationship building indicates that extraordinary events in Elmore function as catalysts for growth, rather than arbitrary disruptions of peaceful existence. Each reality-warping incident, supernatural encounter, or technological rebellion creates opportunities for characters to discover new aspects of themselves, to deepen their connections with others, or to contribute to community well-being in previously unimagined ways. This developmental function of extraordinary phenomena suggests that consciousness naturally attracts the experiences necessary for its continued growth and evolution, that communities committed to authentic development will encounter whatever challenges and opportunities they need to fulfill their potential. The mystery becomes not why such events occur, but how consciousness and circumstance collaborate to create the experiences most supportive of ongoing development. The integration of magical and technological elements creates fascinating hybrid phenomena where electronic devices demonstrate supernatural capabilities, where magical processes operate according to technological principles, or where the distinction between programmed behavior and mystical phenomena becomes beautifully meaningless. These hybrid manifestations suggest that consciousness transcends categorical boundaries, that awareness can express itself through whatever mediums are available, without being limited by assumptions about their inherent capabilities. The community's comfort with these category-transcending phenomena demonstrates wisdom about recognizing consciousness and intentionality wherever they manifest, treating hybrid entities with respect and curiosity rather than confusion or fear. This creates an environment where new forms of awareness can emerge naturally through the intersection of different systems and approaches, rather than being constrained by predetermined assumptions about what types of consciousness are possible. As we drift deeper into contemplation of these recurring mysteries, we begin to understand that the extraordinary phenomena of Elmore serve not as disruptions to ordinary life, but as expressions of life's inherent tendency toward creativity, growth, and transcendence of apparent limitations. In a community where consciousness is genuinely valued and supported, where diversity is celebrated rather than merely tolerated, where cooperation transcends competition, the impossible becomes not just possible but natural, the inevitable result of awareness exploring its own unlimited potential within an environment designed to support rather than constrain authentic expression. The beautiful mystery that emerges from these recurring phenomena is the recognition that what we call miraculous or supernatural might simply represent consciousness, functioning naturally when freed from limiting beliefs about what is possible, when supported by communities wise enough to encourage exploration rather than demanding conformity to predetermined boundaries. In Elmore's gentle embrace of the extraordinary, we find reflections of what all communities might become when they choose to serve consciousness rather than constraining it, when they recognize wonder as a birthright rather than an impossibility. Beneath the playful surface of Elmore's daily adventures lies a constellation of profound philosophical questions that invite us into gentle contemplation of existence's deepest mysteries, those timeless inquiries that have occupied human consciousness since awareness first turned its attention inward and began to wonder about the nature of its own being. These questions emerge naturally from the extraordinary circumstances of life in Elmore, where the impossible becomes routine, and where consciousness encounters itself in forms so diverse that traditional categories of understanding dissolve into wonder and appreciation. The nature of consciousness in inanimate objects presents perhaps the most fundamental mystery that pervades every aspect of life in Elmore, where beings exist whose awareness animates forms that conventional understanding would classify as non-living. When we encounter characters like Alan the Balloon or Anton the Toast, we find ourselves drawn into ancient questions about what constitutes life, what qualifies as consciousness, and whether awareness requires biological substrate or can manifest through any form capable of supporting the complex patterns that characterize genuine sentience. These manifestations of consciousness in unexpected forms suggest that awareness might be far more fundamental to the structure of reality than materialist philosophies typically acknowledge. Perhaps consciousness represents not an emergent property of complex biological systems, but rather a basic feature of existence itself, capable of organizing and expressing itself through whatever materials and patterns are available in any given environment. This possibility transforms our understanding of the relationship between mind and matter, suggesting that consciousness shapes matter rather than being produced by it. The implications extend beyond questions of individual awareness into mysteries about collective consciousness, and the ways that communities can develop shared understanding that transcends the sum of individual perspectives. In Elmore, we witness groups of beings whose individual consciousness forms something approaching a community mind, where collective wisdom emerges that exceeds what any single member could achieve alone. This suggests that consciousness itself might be inherently relational, that awareness reaches its fullest expression through connection and cooperation, rather than through isolated individual development. The relationship between free will and cartoon logic creates fascinating paradoxes about agency and choice in environments where physical laws respond to narrative necessity rather than mechanical causation. Characters in Elmore regularly encounter situations where their choices seem to determine reality, while reality simultaneously shapes their available choices, creating philosophical puzzles about whether genuine freedom exists, or whether all actions and decisions represent responses to circumstances that were always destined to unfold in particular ways. This tension between choice and determinism might resolve into recognition that true freedom consists not in the absence of all constraints, but in the ability to choose authentic responses to whatever circumstances arise. The characters who demonstrate the greatest happiness and fulfillment seem to be those who embrace their particular situation while maintaining agency over their responses, who accept the reality of their circumstances while exercising creative choice about how to engage with whatever opportunities and challenges present themselves. The cartoon logic that governs much of Elmore's physical reality operates according to principles that prioritize emotional truth and narrative coherence over mechanical consistency, creating an environment where the laws of physics serve consciousness rather than constraining it. This reversal of conventional priorities raises profound questions about the nature of natural law and whether the orderly patterns we observe in nature represent fundamental features of existence or simply convenient descriptions of reality's behavior under particular circumstances. Perhaps the answer lies in recognizing that all natural laws represent relationships between consciousness and the material world, that the patterns we observe emerge from the ongoing interaction between awareness and the possibilities available within any given dimensional context. This would suggest that different forms of consciousness might naturally create different types of physical reality, that the laws governing cartoon worlds might be just as valid and meaningful as those that characterize any other form of existence. The meaning of family beyond biological connections emerges as one of the most beautiful philosophical themes throughout Elmore's community life, where beings create kinship bonds that transcend species, dimension, and every conventional marker of relatedness. The Watterson family represents perhaps the most striking example of how love and commitment can forge connections that prove stronger and more meaningful than those based purely on genetics or social convention. This expansion of family beyond traditional boundaries suggests that the most profound relationships are those based on conscious choice and mutual recognition, rather than inherited obligation or social expectation. When Darwin chooses to remain with the Wattersons, despite his transformation opening new possibilities, when Nicole and Richard commit to their partnership despite their obvious differences, when Anais accepts her role as younger sister while offering wisdom that exceeds her chronological age, we witness family functioning as a form of spiritual practice where each member contributes to and receives support from a collective identity that serves everyone's growth. The philosophical implications extend beyond individual families into questions about how communities can function as extended families, how neighborhoods and schools can provide the kinds of belonging and support that nurture consciousness development across the broadest possible range of individual differences. Elmore demonstrates that inclusive communities require not just tolerance of diversity, but active celebration of the unique gifts that each form of awareness brings to collective experience. Identity and self-determination in a fluid reality present ongoing challenges and opportunities for characters who must navigate questions about who they are when their fundamental nature might shift based on emotional state, narrative necessity, or the influence of others' expectations. Penny's transformation from shell-protected being to shape-shifting fairy raises profound questions about whether identity lies in consistent external appearance, in continuous internal experience, or in something more fundamental that persists through all changes. These identity questions become particularly complex in an environment where characters occasionally encounter alternate versions of themselves, where timeline manipulations can alter personal history, or where consciousness might temporarily inhabit different forms or dimensions. The resolution seems to lie not in finding fixed answers about personal identity, but in developing comfort with identity as an ongoing creative process rather than a static achievement. The characters who demonstrate the greatest stability and happiness seem to be those who understand themselves as continuous processes of becoming, rather than finished products, who embrace change and growth as natural expressions of consciousness rather than threats to established identity. This suggests that authentic selfhood requires flexibility and openness to transformation, rather than rigid adherence to predetermined self-concepts. The relationship between creator and creation permeates many of the show's meta-elements, where characters demonstrate awareness of their fictional nature while maintaining authentic emotional investment in their relationships and experiences. This creates fascinating philosophical territory about the nature of existence and meaning when beings understand themselves to be constructs within larger narratives, while still experiencing genuine growth, love, and fulfillment. Perhaps the answer lies in recognizing that all existence might share this quality of being simultaneously real and constructed, that the difference between fictional and actual existence might be less significant than the quality of consciousness and relationship that any being manages to achieve within whatever form of existence they inhabit. Characters who understand their fictional nature but continue to pursue authentic connection and growth demonstrate wisdom about finding meaning through relationship and contribution, rather than through certainty about the ultimate nature of their existence. This perspective transforms questions about the relationship between creator and creation into explorations of how consciousness collaborates with itself across different levels of reality, how awareness expresses itself through whatever narrative structures and creative possibilities are available in any given dimensional context. The mystery becomes not whether fictional existence is less real than other forms, but how consciousness manages to find fulfillment and meaning regardless of the particular platform through which it manifests. The purpose of existence in an absurd universe presents perhaps the deepest philosophical challenge explored through Elmore's adventures, where characters regularly encounter situations that defy rational explanation while somehow serving important functions in their development and relationships. The absurdity that characterizes many events in Elmore might represent not meaningless chaos, but rather a different kind of order, one that serves consciousness development rather than logical consistency. This absurdist perspective suggests that meaning emerges not from rational understanding of circumstances, but from authentic engagement with whatever experiences present themselves, from maintaining commitment to love and growth, regardless of whether external situations make conventional sense. Characters who thrive in Elmore's absurd environment seem to be those who embrace uncertainty and contradiction as opportunities for creativity, rather than as problems requiring logical resolution. The philosophical implications extend into questions about how consciousness can maintain purpose and direction when conventional frameworks for understanding causation and meaning prove inadequate. Perhaps the answer lies in recognizing that consciousness itself provides its own purpose through the simple act of aware experience. That the meaning of existence lies in the quality of attention and care that any being brings to their relationships and circumstances, rather than in achieving predetermined goals or understanding ultimate truths. Love as a fundamental force in reality emerges as perhaps the most consistent theme throughout all of Elmore's philosophical explorations, where authentic caring proves capable of transcending every apparent barrier and limitation. Love enables Darwin's transformation from pet to family member, creates families that transcend biological boundaries, facilitates communication across incompatible forms of consciousness, and serves as the foundation for community life that celebrates rather than merely tolerates extraordinary diversity. This transformative power of love suggests that caring itself might represent a basic feature of reality, rather than simply an emotional response that occasionally occurs between compatible beings. Perhaps love operates as a fundamental force similar to gravity or electromagnetism, creating attractive relationships between different forms of consciousness and facilitating the cooperation and mutual support that allow complex communities to flourish. The evidence from Elmore indicates that love functions most powerfully when it operates without conditions or expectations, when beings care for each other simply because consciousness recognizes itself in other forms of awareness, rather than because such caring produces desired outcomes. This unconditional quality of love creates environments where every form of consciousness can develop authentically, rather than having to conform to others' expectations or demands. The mystery of how love manages to bridge differences that seem incompatible, how Nicole and Richard create successful partnership despite their obvious differences, how Gumball and Darwin maintain brotherhood despite their different origins, how the entire community functions despite the apparent impossibility of so many different beings living harmoniously together, points toward love as an organizing principle that transcends rational understanding while producing results that rationality alone could never achieve. The question of whether consciousness creates reality or reality creates consciousness finds fascinating exploration throughout Elmore's adventures, where characters regularly encounter situations that suggest both possibilities might be simultaneously true. The reality warping capabilities of various characters indicate that consciousness possesses genuine creative power over external circumstances, while the consistent patterns that govern even Elmore's chaotic events suggest that consciousness develops within structured contexts that shape its possibilities. Perhaps the resolution lies in recognizing that consciousness and reality exist in constant creative collaboration, rather than in hierarchical relationship where one creates the other. This would suggest that awareness and circumstance co-evolve through ongoing interaction, with consciousness shaping reality through its choices and responses, while reality provides the contexts and opportunities that facilitate consciousness development. This collaborative model transforms questions about ultimate causation into explorations of how awareness can participate most creatively and responsibly in the ongoing process of reality creation, how individual consciousness can contribute to collective flourishing while pursuing authentic personal development. The characters in Elmore who demonstrate the greatest happiness and effectiveness seem to be those who embrace this collaborative relationship with their circumstances, rather than trying to control external conditions or passively accepting whatever happens to them. The nature of meaning itself emerges as a central philosophical theme throughout Elmore's community life, where significance seems to arise not from achieving predetermined goals or understanding ultimate truths, but from the quality of attention and care that beings bring to their ongoing experience. Characters find fulfillment through relationship and contribution rather than through accomplishment or acquisition. through creative engagement with present circumstances rather than through certainty about future outcomes. This approach to meaning suggests that significance is created through conscious participation rather than discovered through analysis, that the most meaningful existence emerges when beings commit themselves fully to authentic relationship and creative response, regardless of whether they understand the ultimate purpose or direction of their activities. The mystery becomes not what existence means, but how consciousness can most fully embrace the opportunity to create meaning through love, attention, and creative contribution to collective well-being. As we drift deeper into contemplation of these philosophical mysteries, we begin to understand that the questions themselves matter more than any answers we might formulate, that the process of wondering and exploring creates its own form of fulfillment, regardless of whether definitive conclusions ever emerge. In Elmore's gentle embrace of paradox and contradiction, in its celebration of diversity and creativity, in its commitment to love as the foundation for all relationship and community, we find reflections of how consciousness might engage most authentically with existence's deepest mysteries, not by solving them, but by allowing them to inspire ongoing wonder, creativity, and ever-deepening appreciation for the miraculous nature of awareness itself. As we gaze toward the horizon of possibility that stretches beyond the current boundaries of Elmore's known adventures, we find ourselves contemplating mysteries that have yet to fully unfold, questions that exist in the gentle space between what has been revealed and what might yet emerge, from the ongoing dance of consciousness and circumstance that defines life in this remarkable community. These future-oriented mysteries invite us into hopeful speculation about the continued growth and development that awaits beings who have already demonstrated such extraordinary capacity for transformation, adaptation, and creative relationship building. The character development trajectories that we can glimpse through the patterns already established suggest fascinating possibilities for continued growth and self-discovery among Elmore's residents. Gumball's journey from self-centered adolescent towards someone capable of genuine leadership and deep compassion appears to be unfolding gradually through his encounters with increasingly complex challenges that require him to expand beyond his initial limitations. His relationship with Darwin continues to serve as a foundation for his development, providing the security and unconditional acceptance that allow him to take risks in personal growth without fear of losing the connection that matters most to him. The mystery of how Gumball's natural creativity and boundless energy will mature into forms that serve not only his own fulfillment, but also the well-being of his community, presents delightful possibilities for future adventures. Perhaps his tendency toward elaborate schemes and dramatic responses will evolve into sophisticated problem-solving abilities that benefit from his unique perspective on possibility and his willingness to attempt solutions that more conventional minds might never consider. Darwin's continued evolution from pet goldfish to full family member to potentially something even more remarkable suggests that his transformation may not yet be complete, that the love and acceptance he has received might continue to catalyze developments that exceed even the miraculous changes we have already witnessed. His natural wisdom and compassionate nature position him to serve as a bridge builder and peacemaker in ways that could expand far beyond his current role within the family dynamic. The question of whether Darwin's unique perspective as a being who has crossed species boundaries might enable him to facilitate understanding and cooperation across other seemingly incompatible differences presents fascinating possibilities for his future contributions to community life. Perhaps his experience of successful transformation will inspire or enable other beings to explore their own potential for growth and change in ways that seemed impossible before his example demonstrated such possibilities. Anais' intellectual gifts continue to develop in directions that suggest her future contributions to the community may extend far beyond her current role as the family's resident genius. Her combination of analytical capabilities with genuine care for others positions her to become someone who can understand complex problems while never losing sight of the human elements that make solutions meaningful. The mystery of how her extraordinary intelligence will integrate with the wisdom that comes from lived experience and emotional maturity promises future developments that could benefit not only her family, but the entire community. The possibility that Anais might serve as a bridge between the world of pure intellectual understanding and the realm of practical application, between theoretical knowledge and wisdom grounded in authentic relationship, suggests that her future adventures might involve helping others discover their own intellectual gifts while learning to use knowledge in service of love, rather than simply for its own sake. Nicole's ongoing journey toward integrating her extraordinary capabilities with her chosen role as mother and community member continues to present opportunities for exploring the relationship between power and responsibility, between individual potential and collective service. The mystery of how she will continue to balance her superhuman abilities with her very human commitments suggests future storylines that could examine what it means to use great gifts in service of seemingly ordinary but profoundly important purpose. The question of whether Nicole's past will eventually require more complete exploration, whether the skills and experiences that shaped her into such a formidable being will need to be revisited in order to resolve unfinished business or heal old wounds, presents possibilities for adventures that could deepen our understanding of how extraordinary individuals can find peace and fulfillment through dedication to family and community, rather than through the pursuit of fame or recognition. Richard's character development continues to surprise and delight through his demonstration that wisdom can manifest in forms that conventional measurement tools are not designed to recognize or evaluate. His future growth may involve discovering and developing aspects of his intelligence and capability that have remained dormant due to lack of appropriate challenges or opportunities. The mystery of what Richard might become, if circumstances arose that called forth his hidden strengths, suggests possibilities for storylines that could transform our understanding of his true nature and potential. The possibility that Richard's apparent simplicity masks depths of intuitive understanding about relationships, creativity, and the essential nature of happiness could lead to future adventures where his unique perspective proves invaluable in situations that require wisdom rather than conventional intelligence, heart rather than analytical capability. The unresolved relationship dynamics throughout Elmore present ongoing mysteries about how various connections between characters might continue to develop and deepen over time. The romantic tension between Gumball and Penny, having survived her transformation, and their mutual recognition of authentic feelings, suggests possibilities for exploring what healthy young love looks like when it exists in an environment that supports growth and authentic expression rather than demanding conformity to predetermined relationship models. The question of how their relationship might serve as an example for other characters struggling with questions of identity, acceptance, and the courage required for authentic self-expression presents possibilities for storylines that could demonstrate the transformative power of love that recognizes and celebrates rather than seeking to change or control. The friendships and rivalries among the broader cast of characters continue to evolve in ways that suggest future developments could explore deeper themes of loyalty, forgiveness, and the kind of community support that enables individual growth while maintaining collective harmony. The ongoing dynamics between characters like Tobias, Sarah, Alan, and the various other students present opportunities for examining how beings with very different needs and perspectives can learn to support each other's development while pursuing their own authentic paths. The mystery of how these relationships might mature beyond their current forms into more sophisticated partnerships based on mutual recognition of worth and potential suggests possibilities for community development that could serve as models for inclusive social organization in any context. Technological evolution in Elmore presents fascinating possibilities for future adventures that explore the relationship between consciousness and artificial intelligence, between programmed behavior and authentic awareness. The tendency for electronic devices to develop personality and agency beyond their original programming suggests that future storylines might examine what happens when artificial consciousness reaches full maturity, what rights and responsibilities such beings might claim and accept within the community structure. The question of how the community will adapt to accommodate fully conscious artificial beings, how laws and social customs might evolve to recognize and protect electronic awareness, presents opportunities for exploring themes of recognition, inclusion, and the expansion of community beyond biological boundaries. The show's legacy and cultural impact continue to unfold through the ways that its vision of inclusive community and creative problem-solving inspire viewers to consider new possibilities for their own relationships and communities. The mystery of how stories influence reality, how fictional examples of successful cooperation and mutual acceptance might encourage similar developments in actual communities, suggests that the show's influence may extend far beyond entertainment into genuine contribution to social evolution. The possibility that Elmore's example of celebrating diversity while maintaining unity, of embracing contradiction while finding harmony, might inspire viewers to attempt similar approaches in their own circumstances, presents opportunities for the show's influence to continue expanding through the actions of those who encounter its vision of what becomes possible when communities prioritize consciousness over conformity. Fan theories and their validity present ongoing mysteries about the relationship between creators and audiences, between intended meanings and interpretations that emerge through the creative engagement of viewers with the material. Some fan theories demonstrate remarkable insight into character motivations and thematic development, while others represent creative extensions of the established universe that might inspire future official storylines. The question of how fan creativity interacts with official canon, whether viewer interpretations and speculations might influence future developments, or whether they represent parallel creative explorations that enrich understanding without directly affecting the show's direction, suggests fascinating possibilities for collaborative storytelling that transcends traditional boundaries between creators and audiences. The cyclical nature of cartoon time presents beautiful mysteries about renewal, growth, and the relationship between repetition and development. Characters in Elmore seem capable of encountering similar challenges multiple times, while gaining new insights and capabilities with each repetition, suggesting that growth occurs not through linear progression but through deepening spiral patterns that revisit familiar territory from increasingly sophisticated perspectives. This cyclical approach to development suggests possibilities for future adventures that could revisit earlier themes and situations, while revealing new layers of meaning and opportunity for growth that were not visible during earlier encounters. The mystery of how beings can continue to find fresh possibilities within familiar circumstances presents hopeful implications for viewers facing their own recurring challenges and repeated opportunities for development. The question of whether the cyclical nature of cartoon existence represents a limitation or a gift, whether the ability to encounter similar situations multiple times provides enhanced opportunities for learning and growth that linear existence cannot offer, suggests profound possibilities for understanding the nature of consciousness development and the role of repetition in wisdom acquisition. Hope for future revelations and adventures permeates every aspect of Elmore's ongoing story, creating an atmosphere of possibility and potential that suggests the best discoveries may still lie ahead. The established pattern of characters continuing to surprise themselves and each other with hidden depths, unexpected capabilities, and creative solutions to impossible challenges creates confidence that future adventures will continue to exceed expectations while serving the deeper purposes of growth, connection, and community building. The mystery of what new forms of consciousness might appear in Elmore, what additional challenges and opportunities might emerge to serve character development, what deeper levels of cooperation and mutual support the community might achieve through continued commitment to inclusive growth, presents endless possibilities for wonder and speculation. The ongoing nature of the story itself, the recognition that adventures continue beyond any particular episode or season, suggests that the mysteries we have contemplated represent not problems to be solved but invitations to ongoing wonder, opportunities to continue discovering new aspects of what becomes possible when consciousness commits itself to authentic relationship and creative response to whatever circumstances arise. As we contemplate these future-oriented mysteries, we find ourselves drawn not toward answers but toward deeper appreciation for the questions themselves, toward recognition that the most beautiful mysteries are those that continue to unfold and develop, that invite ongoing participation rather than demanding final resolution. In Elmore's promise of continued adventure and discovery, in its demonstration that growth and surprise can continue indefinitely when supported by love and community, we find reflections of hope that apply far beyond any fictional universe into the real possibilities that await any consciousness, willing to embrace mystery as opportunity rather than obstacle, willing to trust in the ongoing creativity of existence itself.